Welcome to another episode of Talking Nerdy in the Bedroom with me. And again, we're doing a special version of the podcast. I am joined again with Dennis. Hi, Dennis.
Hello.
So, Dennis is back. I just got back from my trip, so this works out great. And yeah, we just had Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving, Dennis? Good? Have fun with the family?
Uh, yeah, so Thanksgiving number two for me. I celebrated first one about a month ago in Canada, and now this is the real Thanksgiving with everybody else. Ate way too much, but it was worth it.
Yeah, ate way too much and watched way too much football, even though I don't that doesn't even sound like a real thing. But game started at 12:30 and didn't end until 11:30. I think it was like 11 straight hours nearly of football and food and friends and laughter. So that part was good. Although sometimes, even though you do nothing for the most part, unless you're the one cooking, it's exhausting. Like just it's a long day.
It is. It's tiring. Especially I had the hour and a half drive to my parents' house, and then after dinner, an hour and a half drive back, and in being in a food coma and an hour and a half drive,
Oh yeah,
probably not the best situation.
yeah, no, I don't recommend that for anybody. But that's what I think a lot of people do. They go visit their family or their family comes visits them. And unless you've got a huge house and everybody's staying over, everybody leaves afterwards. So yeah, you get all that tryptophan in your system. And then you're like, hey, I got to drive home and with a full belly, let's just stop somewhere and take a nap.
Yeah, that would have been wonderful.
All right, and then yeah, so after that, then I did my trip. I headed to Buffalo, your old stomping ground. That is a 10 hour, 9 hour drive, 9, 10 hours. We were supposed to get snow throughout the whole drive, and we got none. We got flurries like 30 minutes at one point, and that was it. So that was good. I also just learned that basically Buffalo misses almost every storm. It seems like all the surrounding areas around it get hammered with snow, and then Buffalo just sits there and doesn't really get any. Or
It,
which I've had the buddies now living there for almost 2 years, and that's what they told us. Which everything on the weather was like, we're gonna get battered with this storm, and they're like, yeah, I don't. We probably won't get anything, and that's exactly what.
no, there's a dividing line. So if you look at the map and you look where Lake Erie kind of points, where the wind comes across, that's where the snow goes. And there are times where it drifts north and it clips the top half of Buffalo and Erie County and Niagara County. But most of the time, it really stays below the city, but the south towns, so like Orchard Park and them, Cheektowaga, they they get snow. Cheektowaga south into the south towns. And Orchard Park is where the Bills play, so there's plenty of snow for football games.
Yeah, so that's it was always been on my bucket list. One, I obviously I like seeing the Niners play. The Bills, I wanted to kind of experience the Bills Mafia, which we didn't really get to because of the storm. Um, and but when we got to the Bills Stadium and then got to our seats, it really wasn't snowing. And then just as the intro stuff of everybody coming out and then them doing the coin toss, it started snowing and it was amazing. And then it stopped at one point and then got a little bit worse and then came back. And then at the end of the game, it started going again. It was, yeah, being in a snowball was a lot of fun. It wasn't so bad that you couldn't see the field, but the Bills' first touchdown, the crowd went bananas and snow was just flying everywhere, and it was, yeah, it was basically like a 50, 60,000 person party. We don't have to talk about the score, do we? Do we have to
You
mention?
know what? You don't have to. It's okay. We'll just People can Google it now.
Yeah,
It's fine.
yeah. They can Google my sadness as I was watching. And then to make matters worse, I've got James Cook in a fantasy football, and he did really well. A buddy of mine has Debo Samuel, who's on my 49ers team, and he didn't do very well. Um, and I still ended up losing to him by less, or I think a little over a point in fantasy football. So not only did I have to watch my team get absolutely battered, I also lost fantasy football by a point, and it was just bad, bad all around.
And you lost McCaffrey again.
Yeah, lost
That
McCaffrey for
didn't
at
help.
least 6 weeks, Jordan Mason for four. Yeah, yeah,
It didn't work out too good for the Niners this week.
it did
That's
not.
okay.
It did
But
not.
the snow game is an experience. The Buffalo Stadium, as it stands now, I still call it Rich Stadium. It's Highmark, I think it is right now.
Yep.
It's changed name 100 times, but I still call it Rich Stadium. It's a blast. It's an old stadium, but it's a party. When they build the new one, I don't know what it's going to be like, but those snow games are an experience. I went to a hockey game, the first Winter Classic, in '08, and Penguins played the Sabres, and same thing. It just started snowing flurries, and it's like this is. Uh, it's just adds to that ambiance, and it's part of the experience. It really is just something.
Yeah, so I've seen I went to Philadelphia 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that, and watched uh Green Bay Packers versus Philly, and that was a blast. And then the following year watched the 49ers versus the Eagles, and the 49ers decimated them. And it was really fun. Like the whole experience of being at the football stadium with that so many like-minded people, similar to like when I went to WrestleMania. Everybody there is for WrestleMania. You don't just randomly show up to WrestleMania because I got nothing to do today. Like this is planned out, you've been a fan, yada yada. Football games are mostly the same thing. Obviously, you got some people that just drag people to it, but for the large part, 95% of the people in that arena is for this. So then you take that and then you morph it into a snow game where everybody's going even more bananas. Everybody's just as hyped as you are, even if it's their 100th time going to see a snow game. They're still like, yes, this is awesome. We wait for this. This is our team. Yeah, whole other experience than anything that I've done before, and I'm okay never doing it again. Like in the sense of trying to plan for it, but if it, to be fair, I didn't plan this one. It was just like, hey, this is when they're playing. Let's go to Buffalo and then hit up Montreal after, and it just worked out that way. But if I never saw another one again, I wouldn't be upset. But if one happened to happen, I'd be like, cool, this is great, let's do it again.
They're always a good time. Depending on the snow, this time of year you're fine. If you hit a different time of year where it's a wet snow, maybe a little less fun because now you're just cold and wet. Uh, but this was the good snow. It didn't make you too just soaked.
No, no, it did not. It definitely didn't. It felt like it was almost styrofoam. Like the way it came down was like styrofoam in your hand, and you're like, well, that doesn't feel like snow or look like snow. And eventually it'll melt like snow, and you can throw snowballs, and there were a lot of snowballs. But yeah, it definitely didn't. The storm that we got in Maine the day before I left, so on Thanksgiving, very wet, very heavy snow. I shoveled when I got home, and even though we only got a couple, like maybe 3 inches or so, it was so heavy because of that. If that happened during that game, it would have been absolutely a different experience. So this was like almost perfection of the storm minus the score. Like if my team could have won, I would have just been the icing on the cake. But no, no, can't have everything.
You know what? Good with the bad, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I did end up. I hit a 12 leg parlay. I picked all the right winners and turned $3 into $500.
Pretty
So
good.
yeah,
That's nothing to sneeze at.
no, I just had to sweat over the Carolina game because they almost came back to beat the Bucks, and then I picked the Broncos to beat the Browns, and that game went 4 hours of craziness. So I didn't know what was going on there, but yeah, ended up making out, basically paying for most, if not all, of the trip.
Listen, that you can't downplay that. Uh that's a pretty good thing to have happen.
Yeah,
That's not easy to do, especially in this NFL day and age.
I know everything is so crazy. You never know who's gonna win, what's gonna happen, and yeah. So I was happy that it happened. I wasn't expecting it to happen because again, I threw $3 on it as like a long shot, but I'll take it. I got my team got destroyed, fantasy football lost, but hey, I made some money.
That's the way it's got to be. It's the way it's got to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm assuming you've caught Survivor Series this past weekend.
We did. We made time for it.
Yeah. So I want to talk before we get into specific matches. What were your overall feeling for it? Like, if you have to give this pay-per-view a rating, what were you feeling?
It Average isn't the right word. It it was fine. There was nothing bad. There was nothing bad, but there also wasn't anything like holy shit moment, right? Either it was fine. It was perfectly entertaining. Everything just seemed to go well. It was just fine. I don't know if that sounds bad, but it's not. Like it's okay. Like I'd give it a solid if I had to put it like an A B C D. It'd probably be a solid B. Like
So for me, I was disappointed because I expected more, but I think that's also because how good some of the other events have been. Like Bad Blood was a great pay-per-view or premium live event was great. But part of that was because they had all these feuds that could come together at the right moment and tell the right story. And when you have the women's war game match, I don't feel like we really had that. We didn't have a lot of stories coming in that made sense for them to all be on different teams and for it to be like this big monumental thing. We had the Intercontinental Championship. That was a fine match, but there wasn't much of the story there besides Sheamus going for being a Grand Slam champion of winning the Intercontinental title. The world title match, like you didn't have anything besides for, hey, this is a rematch, I want to win on my own. That didn't happen. And then you have the only match to me that really had a full story is the War Games match for the men. And I thought they did really well with some of the storytelling in there, but we'll get into more specifics of the match. It definitely left me wanting more, not just like The Rock showing up, not just somebody else doing something. I just thought, especially towards the tail end of that match, it was paint by numbers, and you kind of knew everything that was going to happen, and there was nothing of intrigue. And part of that's because of who was on the other side of the ring. Like you got five superheroes or four superheroes, three superheroes at the minimum. You have three big superstars. Then you got Jay and Jimmy, and obviously they're both coming up, especially uh, oh God, which one is Yeet? Jimmy?
Jay.
Jay. Okay. So especially Jay, like he's hugely over with the crowd. I should know that. I bought my friend a shirt for him because he was so over and he was loving the chance. But so like they're super over, and then you have the bloodline who the new bloodline who aren't. So it left a lot to be desired there. But let's so if I had to grade it, I'm looking like a C plus, maybe a B minus, because it wasn't a horrible pay-per-view by any stretch. It just didn't do anything like Bad Blood did for me, like SummerSlam did for me, like WrestleMania did for me, where you're on the edge of your seat the whole time of what's going to happen. But let's start with the women's war game match. First, I want to ask you about the war game match in general because I still like the idea, but I hate the idea that you kind of wait roughly 25 minutes or so before the match officially starts. So there's no real urgency. You know that you're watching 25 minutes that don't really matter. Yes, you could weaken your other opponent. Yes, you could use weapons on them. Yes, you can double team them or you have the advantage or whatever. But the match doesn't start until the last person's in the ring. So you're kind of killing 25 minutes or so of just background noise, so to speak, until the match officially starts. So how do you feel about War Games itself?
Meh. Is that is that a proper response? Meh. I don't hate it. I think it was a novel idea to bring it back, right? Because it's an old idea, and they kind of brought it back. Cool, right? It's always cool to it's not trying something new, I guess, because it was an old idea, right? But it's cool to shake it up. It's not your standard Survivor Series fare that had been done for 30 some odd years, right? Oh, 4-on-4. And then maybe if we remember this year, anybody who survived faces off in a final match. And in the end, this whole event really meant nothing. Fine. It was just, again, if you look back at Survivor Series of like the early 90s, a bunch of 4-on-4 matches that meant kind of nothing for the most part. They were just put together teams. Like they weren't feuds. They weren't maybe a handful of things. Oh, this guy hates this guy, and then he put together a team around him, and they're gonna fight. Fine. Again, the whole event really meant nothing. In the end, it didn't progress anything. Like, and granted, that's old school.
Right?
Not every event has to progress a storyline or end the story. It doesn't. That's a newer school way of thinking. But now that almost feels like that's again where we are. Like, I understand the big main event one did something, right? Because you had such the build up of, with maybe the exception of Punk jumping at the end, the whole build was the team versus team for weeks, months even, since WrestleMania for the most part. The women's match, no. I mean, you had two people, you had Liv and Nia on the same team who just a month prior were at each other's throats, heading in the crown jewel. But now they're on the same team because reasons. Insert reason here, right? So to me, here's the other side of the coin, right? For me, it was just kind of like, I've seen it a couple times now. It's a fun experiment. It's a neat way to get a lot of people involved, but I think you mentioned it before. It's cookie cutter. Honestly, it's the same. Person comes out, goes under the ring, gets a weapon, goes into the match. Person comes out, grabs a weapon, goes into the match. Repeat, 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 repeat. Now the match starts. Now we have spot fest, group battle. Team comes out on top. Okay. Okay. Maybe we do. Maybe you take the stupid time. Like, what's it? If you leave the match, you forfeit. You know what? Maybe that's worse. Hey, beat them all up. Don't pin them and leave. Be that badass. Like, oh, I don't even need to beat them. I'm leaving. They won. Just something to spice it up. Keep them guessing what's gonna happen. Or, oh, he went to the top of the cage and jumped off, not thinking that was a forfeit. I know, something stupid, right? It's very cookie cutter. If you looked at the women's match and you looked at the men's match, they were the same match.
So I
Same
think
stuff happened.
I agree with you for the most part, except the men's match I felt like told a story because of the team versus team thing compared to the women's. But I agree, it was mostly I run out, I get underneath the ring, I grab weapon, I go inside cage. They shut the door on Roman Reigns, we had to climb over. So that at least was a little bit different of how they have to get into the ring, but also it was done very stupidly in my opinion. Like, because then he climbed over and hit one person, they fall down, and then he climbs in. It's like, okay, guys, this was worth it. Like, there was no creativity there.
The wife and I were watching, and it's funny because I enjoy my wife and my daughter's reactions when they're watching this stuff because she takes it. My wife takes it very seriously. Like, well, what's one of her comments? She's like, well, why doesn't the ref know that these guys? They know the bloodline's always gonna have guys coming out. Why don't they do anything about it? I'm like, but it's wrestling. Like, you can't. It just fine. Just don't ask questions like that. Don't ask realistic questions. But even when they closed it and locked it on Roman, she's like, "There's no top on the thing, right?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "So what are they doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know."
I still like the idea though of them shutting it, and then what they should have done, because again, there's 5 of them in that ring right then, right? So it shouldn't be hard to stop him from climbing up. All you have to do is keep hitting the cage, hitting his fingers. So you should have done that for a while and beat the crap out of the other guys.
Right.
And then what I would have liked to happen, I don't know what big monster they have that's a face right now, but you could have made him without him ever interacting with anybody from the thing, where you could have had somebody come out and like rip off the cage door, like a Big Show would, or a Braun Strowman would, or even Bronson Reed, if he was like a face, just rip it off for Roman and then just walk off. So like you get that he's a big monster and like, holy crap, we have to deal with that power eventually. but you don't involve yourself in the match at all, and then Roman gets in the ring. Like, you could have done so much more than, oh no, you locked the door. Oh no, there's a hole in the top. Like, I can just clearly go in, and I climb up, and one person meets me, I hit them, they fall down for no reason. I almost get over. I hit Bronson Reed, and he drops split legged after one punch on the top rope, and then I'm in the ring now. Like, it was
There was
just,
there was no resistance. It was one person beats him up, one person beats, and he's on the top and he's beating him up. I'm like, oh, okay, like, okay, fine. People want to see him in the match. I get it, but at the same point, you almost just made him invincible. He could beat everybody up by just sitting on top of the cage. Just stay up there.
yeah.
They're gonna come after you one at a time. Just stay up there. Now, seeing this, now the other side of the coin of this is right. Is my wife and daughter hadn't seen a war game style match before, so it was new to them. To them, it was a little more fun because it's a different experience. Now, next year, is it going to have the same novelty? Maybe they'll be where I'm at when they say, "Oh, didn't they do this last year?" Well, kind of yes, but
And last year's matches were better too, by like a large margin. The women's match was really good. The men's match was really good. And then I felt like that's what they tried to recreate this time, where almost the exact same spots were used, maybe done a little bit differently. Like when, oh God, what's her name who jumped off the top of the cage with the trash can?
Io
Io?
Sky.
Io, yeah. So Io jumped off, and at the same time, Tiffany Stratton jumped off. But Io jumped off last year, the exact same thing, except took out everybody. And now this year, they just added Tiffany Stratton from the other side doing the exact same thing. So they like didn't change much, but changed it enough to be like, oh, look, it's something different. And I don't like spot fest just for the sake of a spot fest, which some of these matches are, which I get because they're this big elaborate match. But I also wish that the early part of the match mattered. So it's Survivor Series. Why are there not eliminations in this match? Like, it would make complete sense for this match to have eliminations. If you want to go like there are no elimination, well, no, it should be just like Elimination Chamber. It starts with two people, and more people keep entering as you go, and you can eliminate at any time. And then if you end up getting down at the very end to 5 versus 5, that means something. That means you had to kick out. That means you had to survive. That means you had to do this, that, or the other. Or you have the possibility of one team running the table on the other and getting back to the last person. Doing, granted, I wouldn't want that person to win. I don't want John Cena to do what John Cena's done in the past of just wipe out an entire team by himself. But that's a very daunting thing. Your whole team's been eliminated. You're the last one to enter, and you're like, I have to go take this beating. Maybe you eliminate one or two, but then the numbers should become too much. You have so many different elements of storytelling that you could do within that. One of the reasons I like the old Survivor Series matches of the eliminations, even though I agree with you, most of them, not all, but most were just, hey, I'm throwing you guys together. You guys are the good guys. You guys are the bad guys. It's Survivor Series. This is just what we do. But Randy Orton was the sole survivor like 3 or 4 Survivor Series in a row. Never got eliminated and eliminated X amount of people. They used to talk about it at one point where, he's eliminated 12 people from these Survivor Series matches. You could have those type of statistics again from this match and make the beginning part mean more if you could be eliminated. Like, there's just no urgency. If I just went in there to begin with, it doesn't matter. Like, I can't pin, I can't submit. I'm just trying to weaken you, and it just takes away the point. Like, you can skip 20 minutes of the match and then watch it there at the end and still basically understand everything that happened.
Yeah, I don't know if it needs a change. I mean, maybe we're in the minority. I don't know. Maybe it is the point of like, hey, let's take war games, but merge it with what Survivor Series was, and now we have Survivor Series war games. Here's an idea, and here's an idea. Now we marry them together. Maybe it does make more sense. And yes, you're going to have a 5-on-3 sometimes. Would that have made more sense here if, they were all in there and maybe, Punk got eliminated, just for sake of argument, and then it was the new bloodline versus the 4 of the original, and it's like, oh yeah, look, talk about the 5-on-5. Well, now it's 5-on-4 again. Like, you could have just started, right? I don't know. It's just something. That's what I said. Was it a fun match to watch? Sure. Like, I there was nothing wrong with it. That I'm not sitting here and poo-pooing it. It was still fun. There were some great spots. Are there a couple things that come out of that story-wise? I hope so. I hope some of those ideas go somewhere, and then you can look back to see, oh, look what, oh, I didn't even see it at the time. You know, maybe. But
So I
right
think
now, it felt
men's
like just it just
match,
felt like a match right now. It's just like,
yeah.
oh, it was just a fun match.
So I'll say that about the women's match 100%. I think we can already see some of the men's
Sure.
where
Yeah,
the
the
story will
men's.
be. Like, because obviously Punk now did a favor and saved Roman Reigns from being put through a table from the top rope. So like he's gonna get that favor eventually from Paul Heyman, whatever that ends up being. Then you have obviously Sami Zayn kind of aligning himself back with them. So you have that story that'll progress. You have Roman Reigns who's trying ish, even though he's the exact same character, to not be the exact same character, with like wanting his power, like he did with holding the cage for CM Punk, and so he couldn't get out and let Sammy go. So you have all these things that I feel like within that you definitely will see that progress, and I think we did, which we'll talk about Raw shortly. But I think some of that spawned over to Raw too, like especially with some of the promos that were done. And I almost just dove into it just because some of those promos were really good from Raw. But we'll talk about that after. So I think we will see that. But yeah, the women's maybe and hopefully. And I will say they did almost do the thing that I talked about, which I still wish they would have pulled the trigger because Tiffany Stratton had her briefcase and both of them were down. And I was like, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. And she didn't. It was another like fake cash in moment, which I actually didn't mind this one at all because it kind of fit that her other teammates were like, hey, what are you doing? These are our teammates. You can't cash in and take the title from one of them. No. I like that her briefcase was way down at the bottom of the trash can and she's just pulling out everything, not caring what it was, and then pulling out the briefcase. I thought that was a cool moment, especially again, you had both uh, Nia Jax and you had Liv Morgan down. So I thought that moment was good. I still wish they would have pulled the trigger because I just was very curious how that would go. But I like the little fake out in that moment. So you might get some story from that of like, hey, you almost cashed in again, and we're supposed to be friends ish, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been building that for a few weeks now. That we don't have much going on in December other than the Saturday night main event, so that might lead more into something like Rumble, or there's another main event in January, right?
You talking about Raw on Netflix? Because that's gonna be
Well,
like
there's
yeah.
that too. There's another. So you
Oh,
have
Saturday night's main event.
right. So Rumble's not till February, right?
February like 1st or
First.
something.
But there's a Saturday night's main event in January, like the
It,
week before.
yeah, it's the week before. I think it's that Saturday, and the Rumble is the following Saturday or Saturday and Sunday. I don't know if they've split Rumble into two nights yet. Um, but yeah, I did see that. So yeah, so we have January 6th Raw, which is supposed to be a PLE type of show, and then 3 weeks later you'll have Saturday Night Main Event, and then one week later you'll have Royal Rumble. So there's a lot there. I would assume Tiffany Stratton is kind of on SmackDown, so I wouldn't assume there'd be a cash in there, but it would make sense to make the first Raw even bigger if it was cashed in then. But then it makes sense to me, at least the way the story's going, that she'd be cashing in on Nia. Like
Right.
that would make more sense. Um, and maybe she's just given the opportunity to do it again with both of them and then chooses Nia instead. But like that feels like a big day to do it on the first Raw on Netflix.
Or, they've done it before. Who did it before? Where they actually said, I want to use my money in the bank on a particular day.
So John Cena did that, and so did Rob Van Dam.
Van Dam, that's who I was thinking of.
And it was amazing. He was like the only one that basically was like, no, we're doing ECW one night stand, you and me, him versus Cena, which was a really good match, good story. The crowd was
So,
amazing.
so
So yeah,
there's precedent to say Tiffany could do that for
yeah.
Saturday night's main event and make that, your big match of the one of the big matches of the night, much like they're doing with Cody and dang it,
Kevin.
Kevin,
Yeah.
and the next one.
So what I would, if it's me, and again, this is just the E-Fed storyteller part of me, I would love because Tiffany is a heel for her to do that and be like, hey, at WrestleMania, I'm going to cash in, or at Elimination Chamber, or at Royal Rumble, I'm going to cash in, or even saying, hey, on the first Raw, screw it, I'm cashing in, I'm going to go against Liv Morgan for the title. But before that event, cash it in and swerve everybody that you then took the title, and now you, whether it's from Liv or whether it's from Nia, you swerve people, which is a little bit what Daniel Bryan did. Daniel Bryan talked about cashing in at WrestleMania, and then I hated that they did this for him, but because at that moment he was a face. And so him then going back on his word to then cash in, I think it was on Big Show, who was laid out in the ring, or Mark Henry, one of them, and he came and cashed it in like that night on like a SmackDown or something. I didn't like that because he was a face when he's saying like, "Hey, I won this briefcase. I'm gonna hold it till WrestleMania," and then he cashed it in like a month or two later. A heel though, a heel doing that makes complete sense to me. It's something like if I was Canyon, I would have done that. I would have said like, "Hey, I'm cashing in on this date." I did. I said that specifically. I'm cashing in on this date, and then I cashed it in and went heel. But they have that ability, especially with the Money in the Bank briefcase, because she's now been holding it. When was Money in the Bank? May, June?
Yeah,
Yeah, she's been holding it
it's
for a while.
we'll see.
Uh, yeah. So, what did you think of the? Because the other match, obviously, the next one was the U.S. title, Shinsuke and L.A. Knight. Were you in favor of this? Were you not in favor of this?
I'm indifferent. It seemed like it was very quick, not match wise, but build wise. Like it was an interesting decision. What is maybe 3 weeks? Maybe
Yeah, I think it was less than that. Like he came back, attacked him. The next week they announced the match, and like a week and a day later they had the match.
it just seemed very accelerated, which was odd. I'm fine with the match. I didn't think again nothing wrong with it. It was perfectly fine. There was some interesting, you know, spots. Again, they kind of had the two ring thing going on, so they could maybe do a couple extra things. But I
It was,
don't think I would have called a title change because it just seems so fast. Like it almost felt like this was he's gonna go and he's gonna lose, and then they're gonna set up a rubber match or something. Like then he'll come out and get a rematch and he'll win via DQ, and then they'll do it a standard wrestling fair,
yeah.
3 times a charm. And right off the gate, just gave him like, okay. Like, I don't know if that means something politically behind the scenes in WWE world. And maybe against LA Knight. I don't know.
I
Me
think
look
they're just
I
trying to push Shinsuke because I think his contract is coming up, and they seem to do that when some of his contracts coming up, is they try to give him a big push to keep them, which I'm fine with. But Shinsuke this year has lost like 50 matches. I think I saw like a statistic that he's 2-48 or 2-50 this year, like on televised events. And then he goes away for a couple months and then comes back as like a darker version of himself, which he already did, like when he was feuding with Cody Rhodes last year or the year before. And then they just give him the title. I was like, I get it. LA Knight, what? He won the title at Mania, I think. Was it Mania? He had a match at Mania. I think he won the title at Mania. So I get it. Like he's had a good run. Even though he hasn't, yeah, he beat Logan Paul, right?
That SummerSlam.
SummerSlam, was it SummerSlam?
I think it was because Logan Paul tweeted some weird things around the Olympics.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, there was definitely that too.
So that would have been the summer, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was the summer. You're right. Who did he? Now I got to remember who. He beat AJ Styles at whatchamacallit, not for the title. That's right. Okay. Um. So yeah. So he's only held it a few months. So actually, I guess I'm less happy now. Way to ruin my day, Dennis. Um,
What I'm here for.
but yeah, so I don't know. It depends what they do with Shinsuke because they've had so many opportunities with Shinsuke to be this guy. Like I loved him over in New Japan when he was on his title run as the mid card champion, whatever it was called. Now I can't remember. Um, he was decimating people and having match of the year almost every time he wrestled, and it made that title sometimes mean more than the world title because he had held it for like a year, 2 years, something like that, and defended it in great matches. And they had that opportunity with him in WWE, especially after he won the Royal Rumble. And then, okay, you're going to make him lose the Royal Rumble and turn heel against AJ Styles. Great. Do that. And then his heel run did nothing. And he never won the world title. And it was just such a waste. So if they're going to put a rocket ship to his back and send him to the moon and let him do him, then I'm fine with it. Otherwise, it's just going to fall flat for me again.
Yeah, it just seemed weird. Like, I don't know. I don't. Again, I'm fine with it. Again, nothing. I think performer wise, they're both fine. They put on a great show. I think they could both go if they do the whole rematch thing for a few weeks. I think I'm fine with that too. It just seemed weird. You were kind of doing this Andrade and Carmelo thing for a while, where they were kind of fighting back and forth, and then wiggled into the U.S. title, and then all of a sudden they're not. And you had the what's his face Santos jump in there, and his
Yeah.
buddies they got their shots in, and all of a sudden that's kind of the end of this open challenge thing from LA Knight. Here's Shinsuke, we're done. It just seemed very fast. Like it's just
Yeah.
like
I get why you're
when
thinking there
John,
might be something in the background because of that quickness.
it's just like when John Cena did his Cena U.S. Open challenge thing. It went on for a while,
3 or 4 months.
and this just seems like it was I don't know, just too quick. It just feels too quick.
All right. So after that, we had the Braun Breaker, Sheamus, and Kaiser match. I thought Kaiser had a really good match. I thought Sheamus did well as well, and Braun was himself again, still doing amazing in the ring, still bringing that intensity like he can. I thought Sheamus had some great moments within the whole thing. I enjoy a good triple threat when they all work off one another. One of my favorite matches from God, I don't know how long ago at this point, but it was John Cena, Brock Lesnar, and Seth Rollins from the Royal Rumble for so many years ago at this point. And that triple threat was amazing. Then you also have like what the Undertaker, Kurt Angle, and The Rock triple threat from like a Backlash or Judgment Day pay per view from back in the early 2000s. Like I don't mind a very good triple threat match if it makes sense. I don't like when they're just thrown together and it's just like three of you are competing unless there's like some type of stakes for it. So this one, I think it all made sense of why they were having the match, even though I still felt like it was not much of a story there. Kaiser's trying to get out of the shadow of Gunther. Sheamus wants to win his Grand Slam, and then obviously Braun is defending his title. I get all that. Wasn't the best story. I think the match was better than the story, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing. At least that's what you'd rather have. You'd rather have the match be better than the story than the story be better than the match and you're let down. So I guess in that realm they succeeded in my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, going into it, I didn't feel much for it. Like it was just like, all right, I guess I could understand Sheamus and Braun fighting because they were kind of going back and forth for a little bit, and the whole Grand Slam thing, like that kind of made sense. And they kind of tossed Ludwig in there, like, okay, I, nothing against him. I'm it kind of makes a little bit of sense how they're doing it, but it just felt, again, just kind of like, well, it didn't feel like there was a lot of meat on the bone storyline wise here. They fought their asses off. Not gonna take nothing away. Braun Breaker did his Braun Breaker things, um, and the other two were right there with them. Great match. Just felt like you said, storyline wise, just it. I feel bad because I don't think I gave it enough of a chance going into it. Like I was like, I didn't look forward to it like I probably should have. Um, it delivered. I just
It
said
definitely
again,
delivered. Yeah.
I think coming out of it though, it's like, okay, well, what's next? Is that your feud? Is that Braun and Ludwig? Like, yes. No offense, I think Braun should probably beat the crap out of him by just size alone. But hey, uh, if they can go, they can go. Just yeah, I think storyline wise, they just got to work something back together. You know, they obviously had a winning formula chemistry wise. Let's just kind of give it some more drama, make it more, soap opera y around it.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to remember. I think it was like WrestleMania. Might have been the first time it was Roman versus Brock. So was that WrestleMania 31? I think it was. Um, and that whole card, I thought there was no story. I thought it was going to be one of the worst WrestleManias I've ever seen. And it was also during a time where the WrestleManias were getting longer and longer anyway. And every story I thought mostly sucked through that whole card. And yet every match was just boom, 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 including Roman versus Brock, which then Seth Rollins cashes in at the end. But even with it before the cash in, Roman and Brock were having a really good match that I was not expecting. And I was just like, holy hell. Like all of these stories, from my perspective, were not good and were mid at best. And every match just delivered. And I was just like, damn, this is a good WrestleMania. Like everything up to it where you're supposed to be so excited. Like WrestleMania 40, the hype going into WrestleMania 40 was insane. They were selling out arenas. They were so much stuff in social media, so much stuff just out there that everybody knew about. People were talking about wrestling again, so much. And then that event delivered, and it was great both nights. This was one of those where everything going up to it, everybody's like, "Oh my god! All right, we just got to get through this WrestleMania, and hopefully things will get better." And then the match delivered, or the show delivered, and that's kind of what I felt like for this match specifically. Is that not a lot of meat there, as you mentioned, but the match was there. Like it wasn't a 10, but you had three people that definitely had chemistry, definitely could put a match together, definitely had moments where you thought each were going to win, and it would make sense story-wise for them to win. But yeah, it definitely delivered in that sense. I didn't get bored watching the match at all.
No, yeah, I thought, yeah, it surprised me. I'm going forward. I'd like to see I mean, I guess they say Sheamus is out now with a rib injury, with, storyline or not, I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. Uh, so it makes sense now that you can kind of have Ron and Ludwig go for a little bit, and then Sheamus could jump right back. Like, okay,
Yep.
now I think going forward, there's a little bit more meat there, as long as they lean into it a little bit. Like,
Yep.
it's, I guess it's maybe one of those weird situations where the match kicked it off. Like,
Which
you
doesn't
know,
usually happen, but it
yeah,
can.
no, yeah, I can't actually think of a prior situation where you could say, wow, there was a really great match, and that actually kicked off more of a storyline than there was going into that great match. Like, I, yeah,
It,
I'm
it
curious to see where it
definitely
goes.
will. So then after that, we had the world title match with Gunther versus Damian Priest, which obviously Finn Balor got involved with again, and costing Priest the match, which is obviously setting up their feud to continue, which is fine. They should be feuding. I don't like that it's overshadowing the world title. Like I don't like that. It would make a little bit more sense to me if I mean it was initially like Finn cost Damian the title, so then they should have feuded and that had nothing else, which they did a little bit, but it should have had nothing else to do with the world title. And then when Damian gets his shot again, why are we interjecting Finn back into it? Because now it seems like that's the important story, and the world title is kind of secondary, which I never like when a world title is secondary. I hate it when they did that with Punk's reign. I hate it when they did it with Daniel Bryan's reign. Like the world title should be the story, and you should be able to come up with a way to do the story without cheapening the title. Like you can do that for a mid card title, but when you do it for the world title, especially a heel who maybe they're planting seeds for Gunther to go face, but I would not be a fan of that. He's such a better smug bad guy that is because he's doing very similar to what Damian did, where Damian won the title and then wanted to win on his own and kept telling them to stay away and then doing all these things. And now Gunther is doing the same thing of, I don't need his help. I don't want his help. And he still keeps coming out and helping. Like, I don't like that because a heel, if anything, should just be like, I don't care. Like, yeah, I won. We both know the rules. Referee didn't ring the bell. I won. Get over it. Like that's what should be happening. And when they're not doing that, it feels like they're going face to me, which we don't have enough great heels as it is, and Gunther was one of them. So if we get rid of him, we already got rid of Roman Reigns going to face, and John Cena's coming back as a face. Punk is a face. Like Cody Rhodes is the face of the company. Like you need these bad guys, and I feel like we're doing away with them in the worst possible way.
It's funny. I felt the exact same way watching this kind of develop. I mean, we talked last time how it just felt like it was kind of like meh. Like, it's okay. It's a match. We don't see that there's any way that Gunther could probably ever lose, but it's just another match, and it seems like Priest is wasting his shot, kind of thing. But the build where they kind of made Gunther unsure of himself, and kind of like that, like almost. It wasn't like he was asking for pity from the crowd or anything, but it almost like he was leaning that direction of like, I don't know, I don't know if I can beat it. I'm not confident right now. Like, but you just were. Like you were facing Randy Orton and you're saying, you can't beat me. Like, and then you went to that and you can't beat me. And then Damian Priest comes along like, no, I'm just not feeling myself lately. Maybe he can beat me. Like, that's not the. Let him go full blown heel. Just let him go. I was honestly feeling more hate toward him when he was the smug Austrian asshole. Of like, look, I'm the champion. I deserved this a long time ago. I finally have it. Here I am. Suck it.
Yeah.
And now they're kind of like, he's almost teetering on that tweener level. Like he's hedging one way, but then he steps back and he kind of steps one way and then hedges back. But then what's Priest? Is Priest the face? Is Priest the back? Yeah, this whole Priest Gunther thing just felt a little convoluted. Like it was just flip floppy a little bit too much for me. And I'd rather see Gunther just go back, just go be the smug asshole. You do it so well. You play the character extremely well, and that's what is needed right now. Is a heel champion. Let the faces come after you. I don't think Priest was the guy. I know they want to build him, but
look what he did with the IC title. He held it for nearly 2 years and was a smug asshole the entire time, and it was great. He was having banger after banger of matches and beating everybody up, taking on the all-comers. Sometimes he got help, sometimes he didn't. There was never this question of my ability, this, that, or the other. I feel like that maybe they're doing it so they could have the match with Finn Balor, because obviously Finn is supposed to be the heel, so they need him to not be necessarily as heelish. But then you're just using him as a pawn to further the story of Finn Balor and Damian Priest, which I don't like when the world title is used as a pawn when it's not one of them being the champion. The champion is almost a background character. And this is a champion that was a dominant IC champion for 2 years, got his world title shot, didn't waste his world title shot and won it, won King of the Ring, and then won the world title. Like, how do you have a shake of confidence? It's not like you're Sami Zayn, who went so many years without winning a title and got thrown around by the bloodline after, like making them part of his family and then going the other way with everything. And then, you have that shaky confidence, and then he manages to pull off the win at WrestleMania. Great. You just had the most dominant IC reign of all time, win Money in the Bank, or excuse me, King of the Ring, go into SummerSlam, win the world title regardless of how you won it as a heel, and you're talking about shaky confidence. It makes no sense for that. Like, it did a little bit it made complete sense when Sammy said it. It almost made sense when Damian did it, because he really hadn't won like a lot of matches. Like, he'd won some here and there, He put on some banger matches, both as a heel and a face, and they were trying to get him out of Judgment Day to make him more of a face. So I got his thing of like, I don't need you guys. I want to do this on my own. I get that. Gunther's not that guy. And when they're doing that to him, even if hopefully it's just short lived, hopefully it's just through Saturday night's main event so they can progress this story with Finn and Damian. But otherwise, I'm not going to be a fan. Not going to be a fan of this at all. We need those monster heels. I don't. Can you think of another monster heel right now besides for Gunther and Kevin Owens?
I mean, they were kind of building the what's his face? Not it's not Braun Strowman. It's
Bronson Reed.
There you go. That's the one I'm thinking of. They were kind of building him toward that, but yeah.
Yeah, he's supposed to be out, which is why. Well, so now Drew McIntyre's back, so he's probably going to be one of the monster heels again. But that's like 3 monster heels, and yet you have Roman Reigns, you have Jey Uso, you have CM Punk, you have Sami Zayn, you have Cody Rhodes, you have Damian Priest, you have Randy Orton. Like, John Cena's coming back. You have 8 major faces of your company, and you have 1, 2, 3 at the most major heels, and it's just, and you want to change one of them? Like, I don't know. I don't understand why. And maybe we're just not privy to that. Maybe it's part of a long-term storytelling, and maybe great, hopefully. But otherwise, you're just looking at this and being like, what are you guys doing? Like, you guys had the biggest heel of all time of Roman Reigns. I get why you had to turn him face. People were cheering him constantly over the last 6 months or so of his reign. I get that. And he had been a heel for so long with the bloodline, and he was an amazing heel. I get that. But why are we switching these other ones if there's no other people to take their place?
There was a segment leading into, I think it was the Raw before, leading up to this, where Priest attacked Gunther and laid him out, and then like sat in a chair and sat over him saying things. I'm like, when was the last time you saw a face get one over on a heel and almost taunted him like the roles were reversed? What Priest did was a very, I guess, a tweener, but it wasn't a very face move to attack him and then smack talk him as he's on the ground like that.
That's a heel thing, or a Rock Austin thing from like the 90s.
It's like if you were that tweener that could go either way, fine, but that is not a face move.
No,
faces don't do that. That was a Gunther move.
Yes.
Gunther should have attacked him from behind and sat over him and said, yeah, listen, you can come after me all you want, but I'm the damn champion, and I'm still going to be the champion after this week. It just was like, I saw that segment and I'm like, what? What did I just see? Like that whole segment? And I think that was the Monday before Survivor Series. That whole segment threw me off and honestly almost killed any desire I had to watch the match. I was just like, I don't get it. Like, it just, again, 2 very capable wrestlers. And yeah, it looks like they're building back toward the Damian can't get away from freaking Judgment Day because Finn Balor won't let him angle. But man, Gunther was a badass, and all of a sudden in like a week, you basically shot him in the kneecaps.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing, and it's one of the reasons again why I think they're slowly moving him face. Like, if you get attacked like that and then trash talked by somebody who doesn't do that, like Austin did that every week. The Rock did that every week. That was part of their character. They were a bad guy, and then the crowd started to love them, so they became a good guy. That's not Damian Priest. Damian Priest wasn't getting loved by fans. He started acting differently and wanting to prove himself, and then going against the Judgment Day, and then he became a face because of that. He wasn't doing these things every week, and the crowd was just eating it up. So now he's still going to do it now. It just you're attacking the heel and then making sympathy for the heel. And then the heel's like, I didn't need your help. Or when he's talking to Finn Balor, I didn't need your help, didn't want your help, yada, yada. Like that, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know where they're going.
That does. I guess I'm kind of hoping the end of this whole Judgment Day being involved in the title scene for a little while, because I don't know if that's muddying the waters here and making things harder. But oh my God, like I think you just need to reset and put people back where they need to belong, because this is just weird.
Yep.
It's just weird.
Yep, it's hard to argue that point. So let's get to the main event. We already kind of have talked about it a bit here and there. Obviously, to me, match of the night. But even that, it's not that high of a bar. Like, because also the Sheamus match could have also been up there, but this one obviously you're in the War Games match, so you have that extra element to it. You have the storytelling before the match and during the match that was very good. Seeing Solo stop one of the members of the new bloodline to go out and send somebody else was very Roman Reigns-esque from what he did at the previous War Games, and then what Roman did in this War Games when he stopped Punk from going out. So you have they're planting the seeds of that between those two happening, which I love. Long-term storytelling. Let's do it. Let's have at it. Because let's say Punk gets his world title match at WrestleMania, I doubt it's going to be against Roman of all people. But let's say he doesn't win. That doesn't mean that he can't call in a favor and get a match with Roman at like SummerSlam or something if Roman gets the title back. Great. But you're planting these seeds along the way, which if they keep doing that, I'm fine with it. And the match itself, again, we talked about the beginning part being like, why am I watching this? Like, we know nothing major is going to happen until we get further on. We talked about the stupid Roman Reigns entrance, even though I like the idea of shutting the cage, but I didn't like the idea of, I know you have to suspend your disbelief, but 5 people are in the ring and one guy's climbing the cage. It's very easy to keep him out of the cage. I didn't like their creativity with how he got in, but the match itself, they had some really good spots for storytelling with CM Punk and Roman Reigns, with Jimmy and Jay and Sammy. They had good moments there. And then the new bloodline, they didn't really have so many story things until the end. And then I felt like they were treated like little kids because you have we just had Thanksgiving, so you had the adult table, which was the face team, and you had the little kid table, which was the new bloodline. And there's not a massive superstar on the new bloodline, nowhere even close to it, which is one of the reasons I hope for The Rock. There's just not that star power there, and not to mention their track record of wins and losses. It's not really there comparatively. And then on the face side, the weakest one is Jimmy Uso. Like, that's the weakest one out of all of them. The rest of them, Jay is a rising star that the crowd absolutely adores. Sami Zayn, you have the crowd completely behind him, and he's been around forever. You have CM Punk, who's arguably the biggest reacquisition of the last however many years for WWE. And then you have Roman Reigns, who turned from the biggest heel to one of the biggest faces in the company. How are you ever supposed to win that match? Like, even though I think the new bloodline should have won, because now, like, I don't know where they go from here, because like they just got decimated. But of course they did. Look who they were up against. Like, it didn't. When you just look at it on paper, you're like, why? Like, is this going to be a squash match? Which is what it became at the end. Everybody hit their finisher on Solo, and then they beat him. Like, that literally made him look like such a little bitch. And I don't know how. Like, where are you supposed to go with the new bloodline from here? Unless they just wreak havoc, because we're recording this on Thursday, and the last time we recorded on a Friday, and a lot of breaking news happened as we were recording. That's not going to happen this week because SmackDown will be tomorrow, but I don't know where they go from here unless they completely, like, wreak havoc and do something similar to what the Wyatt Six did, or what, God, what was the group with Wade Barrett? Nexus.
The core, yeah. Or
well, I mean, the original Nexus, where they came in and just wreaked havoc with everything, destroyed the ring. Like, you need something like that if you're going to continue to have them on the map. Like, what are they going to do now? They got made to look like chumps. So I don't know how I feel about it. I like the storytelling of it, but I didn't like where they're supposed to go from here unless they're going to turn everybody from the new bloodline into jobbers.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. As watching my wife and kid watch and watching the crowd reaction, yeah, it's great to have the good guys win because that's what people wanted. And the pop was great and everybody was happy and they went home happy. God, that's not what you needed. Like, you really needed, again, you've had Solo. You've been building him. He's beaten Roman, you know, and they faced one-on-one a couple times this year now. interference aside, he's beaten him. Like, it doesn't matter interference. Like, the entire new bloodline could run in the match and beat up Roman, and Solo just pins him. Doesn't matter. He beat him, right? And now you hate them even more because he keeps beating him. Man, you really needed that win here. I mean, again, I'm going to assume that there are way smarter people in the room than me. And that's who's controlling this ship. So more power to him. And I'll love to see where this goes. Would I have a couple ideas what the new bloodline can do next? Sure. I could throw out ideas and they probably mean absolutely nothing. But man, just as like just me kind of sitting there like, man, I really think they needed that win. Just to, you could say, oh, look, the new bloodline won. They're standing dominant. You could have a little bickering between Roman and CM Punk. You could take that in so many different facets, but you just, like you said, Solo stood there. Like everybody else was out. I don't know where the hell, Bronson Reed blew himself up through a table, and Solo or Fatu took a dive through a table, and everybody else just disappeared for a little while. And Solo's there, and he takes everybody's damn finisher like it was the end of an 80s movie. Like, okay, again, was it fun to watch from a like, this is cool? Yeah, of course it was. But going forward, it's like, well, me thinking, putting realistic thought behind a non-realistic show is probably my problem. Um, if you're the new bloodline going into SmackDown, if you have the other four looking at Solo saying, what the hell? Like, maybe that's the point. Maybe they go into SmackDown and this is the downfall of Solo and the rise of Jacob Fatu. I don't know. Maybe he comes back and says, well, I only have one more play. I got to make a phone call. And then that leads into bringing The Rock back for next year. And there's 1,000 ways this could go. And again, there are smarter people in the room that can write a way better story than I can. And it just feels like New Bloodline winning would have been the right move to make the end result better. That's what made Cody's story so much better when he won, because he lost a whole shit ton. And when he finally won, it was that much sweeter. And it almost feels like this win, granted it was in a team setting, it wasn't Roman and Solo one-on-one. But man, it almost seems like anything going forward is like, well, not like he didn't win yet. It's not like Solo's been dominating him for 2 years. No, they kind of traded blows. Like, what's the payoff for the next? I don't know. It just doesn't feel as big.
Yeah, it's hard to. So they needed to win at the Crown Jewel, because if they didn't, it wouldn't make sense for them to have the War Games match. And then when I'm in the War Games, I'm like, it's going to be the faces that win. And I think I mentioned this during our last time. They shouldn't win, though. Like, if you want to continue this story and build up the new bloodline, they shouldn't win. I don't know how they're going to win, because look at the other side. And that was before they added Punk. That's when we thought it was going to be Seth Rollins, until at the very end of our podcast where we announced that it was going to be Punk because it happened live. You're not going to win this match, like, just on paper. So how do you win that match? You got to get creative. You got to do these other things. Like, the ending with Solo almost felt like, because I've seen it before, the dark match. After the show ends and, like, the heel gets everybody's finisher to send the crowd home happy. Great. That's usually what's done. But not there when it's televised, and you take that away from the heat the heels have, because like, what's the point now? All right, we've taken out the new bloodline. What more do I have to do at this point? And if it's a one-on-one match, like, I agree that you could literally have the new bloodline turn against him. You could have them go get The Rock. You could have Solo make that call to get The Rock, which would at least make a little bit more sense for storytelling wise. Like, they couldn't do it themselves. So now let's get the real tribal chief, or the head of the table, The Rock. I would get that, and that would be long-term, but if they don't have The Rock, because there's a lot of rumors out there, which there was last year too, but there's a lot of rumors out there that Rock's not going to be around for WrestleMania. So I don't know what you're doing with the new bloodline then.
Yeah, I don't know. You funny you said that. You said that's like a dark match, and holy crap, that is it. Because
Yeah.
that's the dark match we just when we went to SmackDown. That was the end. It was Cody and Jay and Sammy, I think. Um, and out came Braun Breaker, Ludwig Kaiser, and somebody else. I forget who. Anyways, three completely random people that I didn't expect to see that night. And yet they got like a hit in, and then it's like, yeah, there's a splash or there's a hula kick, and then there's the crossroads, and everybody's happy, yay! Somebody
Yeah.
takes that is you're right. That is 100% what that felt like. And now when you said that, I actually like that match a little bit less.
Yeah.
Uh, just that it just knocked it down. It was fun. It was good. In a vacuum, it was fine. But now looking back, when you said that, I'm like, God, I don't like it anymore.
And you just made it
Oh
feel
my
so much
God.
weaker and worse is what they did with Solo. Like I'm not a giant fan of Solo. I think he's fine, but I think he should still be like that enforcer person. I don't think he has the character to be the full one. Like his promos haven't been bad when they've done like the vignettes, but they haven't been great either. Um, so I'd rather him be that second person. But now you've made him even less than that. Like you kind of made him a joke. And now if he steps up to Roman Reigns, you kind of want to be like, nah, kid, sit down. Like we already did this. Like we all whooped your ass. Like there's no reason for this
They
anymore. And,
all could, and it's not even like Roman beat him.
right.
Yeah. Look, all five of us beat you.
Yeah.
One at a time. We all kicked your ass. Why does that get him? Oh man. Oh
Yeah.
God.
I'm
It's
telling you.
like, oh,
Trust me, I did
oh,
the same thing. Like we saw some
oh.
dark matches when I went to WrestleMania, and that's what they were. They sent the crowd home happy, which I get, and I don't like that for war games. Especially like because that was it. They did that. They Roman pinned him, and they held their hands up, and then they slowly exited the cage. Like
Yeah.
there was no more after that, and there wasn't even anything after taped that got posted on like WWE.com or something or posted on their socials. That was it. And it's just it's very lackluster. And now it's fine if it was a blow off match, but that doesn't seem like that's what they were leading to of it being a blow off match of no more new bloodline versus old bloodline. Like it just doesn't. I don't understand how they're going to continue. Now, again, as I think you've mentioned yourself, you don't put yourself in the smartest person out there. I put myself there. I don't know what you're talking about, but I agree that I probably don't know the long term. And at this point, I have to trust Triple H. Like he's done a lot of good things since taking over. So even though I'm disappointed by how that match ended, even though I'm disappointed by the story, I'll be like, okay, let's temper my disappointment a little bit and be like, oh, let's see where it goes. Can they tie it all together? And they managed to last year. WrestleMania was a great build last year, but it was a bit of a mess because of The Rock announcing that he was going to be around, and then they wanted to be the head of the table, and yet they made Cody Rhodes win the Royal Rumble, and then The Rock, he gave his shot to The Rock, but he really didn't, and it set up the tag match, and then it set up a one-on-one match. It worked out beautifully, but it was a chaotic mess, and I don't know if they can capture that magic again to make it more of a chaotic mess and still end up with a byproduct that you're like, damn, that was really, really good. But I'll tamper my disappointment and see where it goes.
I mean, yeah, I guess the only thing I could say is I guess I am curious for what's next. Like, okay, the the only part of me is, man, I gotta see where they go next, because you're right. You know that these two groups are not done with each other. We know that they're not going in any other direction. They've set up nothing else. These two groups are headed toward at least WrestleMania or Royal Rumble, and maybe not, maybe even toward WrestleMania, right? So you got at least another 2 months of these guys, maybe more. Does Roman come out on SmackDown first and say, start the talk, and Solo's music hits, and be like, "Kid, I'm already done with you. Go away." Well, no, wait. I want one more shot. Let me like Independence. Like, wait. Let me take one more shot, and all of a sudden the shields are down. And then they introduce some new twist, right? Oh, maybe it's not The Rock, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's one of the other 7,000 family members that still exist, and introduce something else. Maybe somebody else comes along. Could be another just random person. I don't know. What's the next twist? Maybe somebody turns on him. Maybe Jimmy was working with us the whole time, and I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
Even Jimmy doesn't flip the tables, star power wise, as you were
No.
mentioning. But could that just be the next twist? Just some. Okay, you got to take it to the next level. I don't know what that is. I'm just I don't know. I guess we'll find out at SmackDown. It's just like everybody else. But yeah, no, it's just man, just that thing. Just it felt like a blow off. Like this felt like that's how you would end the WrestleMania, and now you go into your new program. But I don't believe for a minute that they're going into a new program.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what that program would be. Like, there has to be something, and maybe I have to assume it's going to be some inner turmoil with the new bloodline of potentially one of them being like, well, you couldn't get it done. You're the one who got pinned, so maybe I need to step up now, and they send one of the other people over there. I don't know, but I agree with you that I think even though I don't like the ending of that match, and even though I don't know where they go from here, I am because to me it was bad. I'm curious where it goes. Like, how do you turn this? What's that old Brock Lesnar expression? Chicken. How do I turn this chicken shit into chicken salad? Like, how do I take this from something from my perspective that wasn't good, like for storytelling purposes, and make it that it was good? Like, what am I not seeing? So that makes me curious of where they're going. Now, in the past, when they've done this, they haven't. They haven't explained anything. They haven't done anything. They just dropped it, and they're like, people don't care about wins and losses. No big deal. And it's like, no, no, that's not how wrestling fans work. Um, so yeah, we're curious. We'll see what happens on SmackDown. We'll see what happens on the next SmackDown. We'll see what happens at Saturday night's main event, which will lead us to the Raw premiere and then the Royal Rumble before we kick off the official road to WrestleMania. Like, curiosity is there. Tempered expectations a bit just because of how certain things went, but I'm a little bit optimistic just because of the last year has been one of the best years that they've had in a very, very, very long time.
And I think that's kind of the key point, right? I guess they are kind of lucky that they have built that kind of goodwill right now. That
Yeah,
they're
the trust.
okay. If this was, 1993, 1994, where you really had kind of like nothing going on, this might turn a lot of people off.
Yeah.
But you've had a really good couple years, and there's still things I want to see that are going on. You know what? I still got the Cody Kevin thing going on. Okay. Maybe the bloodline kind of takes a little backseat for a little while. Maybe that's not a bad thing either. But you still got other stuff going on that I like. And you've built up enough goodwill over the past couple of years that I know that you've pretty rarely dropped the ball entirely. Maybe not made it 100% best decisions, but you haven't made the worst decisions either. So see what happens next.
Yep. So we both caught Raw. That was this past Monday. I ended up just watching it this morning because I got back yesterday from my trip. So it's pretty fresh in my mind, and holy hell, those are some really good promos on quite a few different characters there. Some decent enough matches. Nothing that, in my opinion, set the world on fire. Like, to me, it felt like the promos were where they're going to take the stories to a whole nother level, which is kind of almost what it felt like in the 90s, or the late 90s during the Attitude Era. The matches were kind of saved a bit for the pay-per-views to have like the banger matches, but the segments and the talking and the interactions with people were always where the drama kind of like builds up. And so we opened the show obviously with CM Punk, and everything with him and Seth Rollins, I cannot wait until they have a match. I really hope it's at WrestleMania. I hope they save that till then. I don't know if it'll be for the world title or not. It does seem like CM Punk was promised the world title last year, but then got hurt. Um, so I don't know what'll happen. I don't know how Seth Rollins would have the world title. It looks like Cody's going to hold it till WrestleMania. I'm guessing Gunther's going to hold it to WrestleMania, so I don't know how CM Punk plays into that unless he's somehow added into the Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk. But that doesn't make sense. Like The Rock would make more sense in that match than CM Punk. Besides for CM Punk being owed a favor, they could wiggle him in there, but I would hate that for his story just because his story last year, if he won, he was supposed to lose the Royal Rumble, win Elimination Chamber, and go headline against Seth. Like that was, to me, going to be a really good story. I don't know where they go with him necessarily, but the match between him and Seth right now with their animosity towards each other, and that has been building for over a year now from last Survivor Series and technically when they were both at different companies, like it should be a hell of a match.
Yeah, you are where we were last year. They basically just hit reset, right? Like it's not scene for scene. It's pretty close. You know, hey, he came back at Survivor Series. He came out the next night, and here comes Seth Rollins. Like, okay, it's they're gonna try again. See what happens. Yeah, we were looking forward toward it last year, and I guess we still had some question marks about Punk. I'm like, okay, well, where is he after being the whole AEW debacle and what's going on? What does he have anything left in the tank? Well, I think he proved that this year. So that's great, and I guess it's probably pretty good too because Seth was hurt for much early last year. So you would have had somebody coming off a little bit of a layover and somebody who would not have been 100%. It might not have been the match we hoped it would.
Right.
Maybe now both guys, knock on wood, fake wood, whatever this is, they're in better places physically. If those two go at it like it looks like they should, maybe they can actually deliver that match that we know they can. I mean, let's face it, those are two guys we know can go. So
well, you look at what Seth did with Cody Rhodes' first night back, let alone the trilogy of matches they had. But that first night at WrestleMania was an insane match, just back and forth, really good storytelling. You look at CM Punk and what he was able to do with Drew in everything leading up to, and then especially Hell in a Cell. Like the storytelling there, the brutality there, everything there was phenomenal. So yeah, if those two can do that, they're some of the best workers in the ring, and they can probably put on a 5-star match without even trying. So if they try, like who knows? And again, as you mentioned, stay healthy.
Right. And then what is this favor? Right? Like, okay, they've made a very big deal about this. You had the cinematic promo on SmackDown, and kind of hinting at it again on Raw, and obviously talking to Heyman as they were leaving the ring at Survivor Series. I'm gonna go when I need that favor. I'm gonna like, all right, well, if they're building toward Seth, is that asking Roman to come out and do something to Seth? Is that I don't know, right? Is there something he's gonna ask Roman? A lot of talk has been, well, is he gonna ask to have a match against Roman? Well, maybe it's, well, he's gonna ask Heyman to say, I need Seth to do this, or I need a Roman to do this for me going into a match with Seth.
Yeah.
Puppet master kind of thing. Interesting little caveat. Now we're gonna have to, wait to hear on that for the next, 5 months.
Which I don't mind, honestly. I like
that's okay.
Storytelling. Like I like those little seeds, and then it's not. It'd be different if let's say they did that, but there was nothing else there. There was no other meat on the bone, but there is meat on the bone with him and Seth. There's meat on the bone with him looking at the non-existent WrestleMania sign and being like, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm headed. You guys might not see it, but I see it. I know where it is. That's where I'm headed. So he's setting himself up, obviously, for the Royal Rumble. He'll obviously be at the premiere of Raw. So who knows what transpires there to head to the Royal Rumble. So like there's a lot of meat left for him for other things going on with this added element of the background of, hey, there's still this other thing, don't forget about this. I'm hoping honestly that they don't mention it that often moving forward. I want it to be kind of forgotten about, similar to like when Edge had the Money in the Bank briefcase. Obviously he brought it with him everywhere. He talked about cashing it in a few times, but we also didn't know that you could cash it in at any time. So like when Cena won the Elimination Chamber match at New Year's Revolution and Edge came out and cashed in the Money in the Bank contract, like that was a, oh my God, I forgot that like he even really had that, and that was even a possibility that you could cash it in and do this. There was a couple other times too where people had the briefcase and it didn't seem to be like, oh, they're not ready yet for the title, so you don't even really have to worry about them cashing in. And then, oh my God, they cashed in. So I kind of hope it's one of those where it's obviously not going to be necessarily as impactful as Money in the Bank, but it could be depending on what the favor is. I just don't want them to harp on it. I'd rather it be forgotten about and then be like, hey, you remember that favor I needed X amount of months ago at Survivor Series? And then you can start talking about it once he brings it up again. But it really, I'm hoping that it isn't like beating like a dead horse of like, oh, everybody needs to remember this. Everybody remember this.
I think it's going to be the latter, if you asked me. You know, it's going to be every time he's on screen. Well, let's not forget about the favor he's going to ask for Paul. Yeah, okay, yeah, we know. It has nothing to do with what's going on right now. Just we know. Like,
I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm hoping that it's now without Vince being in the ear of the commentators. I'm hoping that the idea behind it is to leave it like subtly in the background without bringing it up, especially because he's supposed to be on Raw. Roman's supposed to be on SmackDown, even though Roman obviously will be there for the premiere of Raw. I'm just hoping they stay away from each other for now, and then eventually make it mean something.
so
But you're probably
the only thing I'm holding in the back of my head, and it's only because they brought it up, and I didn't think of this the last time we were talking, that the Shield was brought in as mercenaries for CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
And they mentioned that a couple times leading into Survivor Series, and I think they mentioned it at Survivor Series. And I didn't think of it, but I'm only keeping it in the back of my head because they brought it up. So now you're wondering, oh, does that play in because Seth came out with the Shield music? WrestleMania, is the favor going to be, hey, I want you to come out, this music, throw Seth off his game or some crap, the mental games that, maybe CM Punk can play.
Yeah.
As opposed to thinking of it as, hey, I want my title match. Roman happens to have this title, or something that, let's face it, it's Paul Heyman. He's not Triple H. He doesn't have a magic wand. Yes, he's a Hall of Famer. Yes, he's a manager of a bunch of people, but he can't manifest things such as title matches. So that's why I'm hedging my bet toward, well, maybe it's something less tangible than a title shot. Maybe it's something else that they're going to lean toward.
Yeah. It's definitely possible. Again, the fact that we're talking about it is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Right.
Like, if it was nothing that didn't mean anything, we just gloss right over it. But clearly, we believe it will mean something down the road. We hope it means something more than just, hey, I need a ride to the airport, and you came and got me type of moment where that was my favor. No, like it should be something impactful that's going to move some type of stories forward. But yeah, we have to wait and see, which again, I'm not upset about. I sometimes like that. If you have engaging stories now and you set seeds for the future, great. That's what great television does too. They plant these little seeds along the way and then get you to that moment. You're like, oh my God, that's right. It's this, or this person betrayed this person because of what happened 2.5 seasons ago, and you forgot about it because you're stupid. Like, I'm fine with those things happening and us being in that giant soap opera. I don't mind watching a soap opera as a grown adult, damn it.
And my wife usually hates those shows. Those are the shows we can't watch at night. She's like, "Do I have to pay attention to all these details?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, they come back. They come back. You have oh, we have to watch something a little more mindless most of the time." So having things like this is more in my wheelhouse of like, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of things like when I've watched Breaking Bad a number of times, and she really hasn't sat down to watch it because she just doesn't have there's usually too much going on. Like, I can't sit here and pay attention to this for 5 seasons and remember what happened in season one. I'm like, well, then don't watch it. Like, that's half the fun. Like,
Yeah, it's also like one of the greatest shows ever made, and it's because of how it's done. So yeah, I get that. Because I have some friends too. Like I just can't get into it. I'm like, oh my god, like there's just so much there to love about that show. And then Better Call Saul, same thing. Like Vince Gilligan knows what he was doing, and it's just really well made television.
you want to talk long term storytelling? That's that's it,
Yeah,
right? That's now
episode
whether
one through the end.
whether that started off. If I don't think he sat down and wrote episode one with the episode, final episode in mind. However, to make it all tie together, that is how you do long term storytelling, and that is, I don't want to say what WWE should be emulating, but they should be taking notes.
Well, and also what was good about Vince Gilligan was they were going to kill Jesse. Jesse was supposed to die in the end of season one or beginning of season two, and because of everybody loving the character of Jesse, he stayed and became the heart of that show and a great counterpoint to Walter White. I don't know what that show would have been without that. Um, I don't know what it could have been without. Like it's hard to think about it now that we've seen it all, and where you go back to and be like, hey, this could have changed, or this could have changed, or this could have changed. Have you watched Stranger Things?
Not we used to watch it and then we just stopped. And so I've seen a
Shit.
few seasons. I know.
So season one, great. Season two, bad. Season three, good. Season four, amazing. And now we have the fifth season whenever that comes out. But there's a character, and now I'm gonna not remember his name, but he was the jockey, good-looking kid that becomes good friends with all the little kids. Um, he was supposed to die season one, and they decided not to kill him, and now he's become an integral part of the entire story. And I can't imagine that show without him. Like he's so interwoven into everything, and his character makes sense. So Breaking Bad, same thing. Like Jesse is like, if I think of Breaking Bad, I don't just think of Walter White. I never have. It's Walter White and Jesse. Like those are the characters. Obviously, Better Call Saul. I only think of Saul, even though it's Saul and really the Kim. It's really those two. But I could see Better Call Saul and only think of Saul. But when I think of Breaking Bad, it's those two. So to have that, and then since Triple H has taken over, I feel like for the most part, not everything, but for the most part, he's listening to the crowd. He's interweaving things together to the point where you look back and go, well, they were going to do this. Like when you hear that original story of Cody giving up I don't know why you make Cody win the thing if you're just going to have him give it up anyway, but that's what their idea was to begin with. Give up the world title shot at WrestleMania for The Rock. And then that's the way that they ruin the bloodline and all this other stuff. And you look back at that and go, God, that would have been so much different and worse. And then what they came up with, you're like, that's so much better. It was a great run to WrestleMania. So if they can keep doing that, again, we have faith with some of that stuff. You got Punk, you got Seth. They're going to commingle with one another. You then had the promo with Sammy and Seth, which I thought might have even been better than the Punk Seth one, just because they pulled the history. Sammy telling Seth, you started this. Like 10 years ago, you started the seeds of the tribal chief. You hit him in the back with a chair. And then Seth being like, you did it too 2 years ago. Like you hit him in the back with a chair and you betrayed him because of what he wanted you to do. I love that. And then they had a good match. And then obviously I didn't like the ending of the match of Sammy grabbing the chair and going to hit Seth because he thought he attacked Jey Uso. And then Seth just hitting him in a roll up. I didn't like that, but I did like the Drew McIntyre coming out after and annihilating Sammy. I like that, and that'll lead to them for something maybe for Saturday night's main event, maybe for the premiere of Raw. Um, but I did like that, although I'm not sure why it's necessarily Sammy, besides for him teaming with Punk, him siding again with Roman Reigns, because I get attacking Jey Uso because Jey was part of the bloodline for a very long time and made Drew's life hell. Sammy didn't really necessarily wasn't a part of that when that happened, but he also sided with them. So I get that part of it, but I'm wondering if he's going to keep going and take out the rest. Is he going to take out Jimmy? Is he going to take out? Is he going to go back after CM Punk, or is he just going to focus on Sammy and maybe Jey Uso?
Yeah, I mean, and you can roll Seth into that too, right? Because Drew had his issues with Seth at the start of the year, over the title, and Punk interjected himself into that, right? So now you have everything kind of rolling together, and now it really is. It really comes down to, well, what direction do they want to go with it? Is it because Sammy was teaming with Punk and Roman? Well, I can't, I'm with Seth now. I can't believe you did this, or is it, I don't like any of you people. I just chose you next.
I
I'll
hope
get
it's
to
that
him,
one. I hope
you
it's
know,
that one. That would make more sense for the Drew character that they had been building up. Like, it's not that I'm now siding with him. It's I'm going through each one of you one by one.
you're right. I'll get to him. Right now, I'm dealing with you. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you know what? There is your fucking badass that we were missing out of fucking Gunther.
Yeah.
Man, maybe it's just been Drew all along. You know,
Do you remember the 3-man band?
I do remember Three Man Band. Yes.
Like, what the hell? Like, I'm so glad that he got canned, even though it was probably done in poor taste, but I'm so glad he did. And then he went out to these other companies, became the character that he did, and then came back because he's been like his face run was really good. And then when he went heel, it got so much better. And I, when he was the quote unquote chosen one, I thought, I don't see anything special here. Not just because of his size, he was a scrawny kid compared to what he is now, but that didn't bother me. I don't mind that. Like, I look at Adam Cole, I look at AJ Styles, even though AJ Styles has bulked up quite a bit. Like, those people, it doesn't matter what size you are, as long as you're good in the ring, good on the microphone. But I didn't see anything necessarily special about him. But to see then him move to like a jobber, to being released, to coming back and just being on fire since the start has been like an awesome thing to watch. And it doesn't happen that often. Similar Cody, same way. But I like Drew's intensity. Like, Cody's intensity sometimes feels manufactured. Like, I don't necessarily believe it. Every time Drew does something with malice, I believe it. And I love that part of the disbelief, because I'm sure he does have some personal problems with certain people in the back, and he gets to relieve those frustrations in the ring, so to speak, but while also being safe. But it makes it believable when he's staring at them, when he's doing that scathing promo, when he's hitting a claymore, whatever it is. Like, there's just that believability behind it.
He's a big man now. Like, I mean, you're right. Like before, he was smaller. He was even, like, let's face it, Randy Orton was not that big either. I would have put them in about the same build. They were tall and lanky for the most part. They were not beefy. They're both big and beefy now. Let's face it, they did not shy away from the weight room. Um, Drew is a big man. He can be imposing when he needs to be. I was blown away this year. Uh, at the start of the, like, like, I felt bad that Drew got his run during the pandemic era. It
Yeah.
just felt hollow. I get it. That sucks for him. I never had anything against him, but nothing ever like drew me to him. His promo work with Punk this year, the
Another level.
whole year, was insane. And I'm like, where the hell has Drew been on my radar this whole time? because this stuff is fucking gold.
Yeah.
Like, just, oh my God. Like, that was it. Like, put him in every main event right now. Like, if he can do that promo level with other people, dude, just do it. Let him go. And you know what? Sammy is a great talker. This is another opportunity for both of them to just not only shine on the mic, but in the, because you know they can both go now. Like,
Yeah.
that is not in question. Sammy can go. We've seen Drew recently can absolutely go. And now, if you put them against each other, whatever reason they manufacture, like, I don't like you because you laugh funny. I don't even care right now. Give them both mics and let them go. Just with maybe a little less restraint, like Punk and him could do. Dude, that'll be feud of the year without a doubt. Like, it's gonna be hard to top this stuff with Punk, but man, if there's another person that could take him to another level, it'd be Sammy.
Yeah, you really do need like a good foil to have. Like Cody and Roman were good foils for one another and elevated each other. Bringing The Rock into it, he elevated both of them to another level. Then um, Seth, Drew, and Punk, all of their promos were just because they had so much stuff to pull from, and the some of the animosity I'm sure is 100% legitimate. You can pull from that and you can use that and you can show your disdain, your distrust, your displeasure, all that stuff in those promos, and know that the other one's probably going to say some stuff back, and then you'll be professional enough in the ring to have those matches that will tear the house down whether you win or lose, and you'll both come out looking well. Like Drew McIntyre lost in Hell in a Cell. He came out a winner. That match was amazing, and they both put on a great performance. You can't argue that. You look at Roman Reigns versus Cody at WrestleMania 40. Roman lost. Did he though? Like, I mean, he turned into now one of the
Right.
biggest faces after being away for a little bit, and that match was epic. Everybody's still talking about that. Granted, it was a bit of a hey, who's coming out next fest. Um, but being live, I was the biggest mark there was of screaming at the top of my lungs anytime anybody came out. Like, it was a blast. But nobody lost in that match, even though there technically was a loser. And if they're able to do that with Sammy and Drew and have a great match, but both come out looking better for it, good. That's what you want.
Maybe it pushes, Drew's been there, right? Let's not. Drew has been in this main event scene for really most of, if not all of this year. Like,
Yeah.
that, maybe not facing for the title every night, maybe not the last match night, but I'd put him in. He has been in a main event type match for most of the year. If he can bring Sammy up with him, probably deserves it at this point too. You got to build that other guy up sooner or later, right? Like, I know Sammy's been around for a while. He's not a spring chicken either, but you know what? He's had his brushes. He's had his brush with Roman Reigns in that main event match. He's now been with, doing the bloodline stuff again in all the main events. You put him with Drew and keep him in that main event scene. And you know what? If they're gonna rope Jay into this too, you know what? Do it. That's. I honestly think it's funny. Like, we talked about how disappointing like the stuff with Gunther and Damian was, and like, man, but wait a minute. They might have something here with this whole Drew and Sammy and Jay kind of thing going on, because that tossed Seth in there too, maybe possibly. There could be something there. There could be some real meat there.
I'm also really hoping so. WWE goes back to what is it, Toronto? Is that where Elimination Chamber is? Toronto?
It is. Yeah,
So
March.
yeah, so obviously, like, I don't know what they do with Sammy then, but I would love him to get another shot at the title, even though I know they're not going to give it to him. But that match with him and Roman at Elimination Chamber in Canada, like, oh God, just watching that was such a good story, such a good payoff. It sucked that the ending, you knew the ending was going to be the way it was, but they made you believe a few different times that they were going to pull that trigger and they were going to beat Roman and Sami Zayn was going to capture the title. I don't know if they can recapture that magic again, but my God, was that one of those moments where you wanted to believe so bad.
Yeah, it's they're pretty good at doing that sometimes. You think back throughout history, and you have a few times where you have the underdog, and they really do a good job of selling it. It doesn't even have to be for the world title. It could be like the Rock and Hurricane, right? When you put the
Well,
Hurricane
Hurricane
over,
won.
right?
Yeah.
But you would have not. No one would have said
No.
that going into it, right? And again, the whole thing, you kind of had that moment throughout where it's like, oh, he's gonna do it, and oh, here we go, he's gonna, oh, he did do it,
Yeah.
right? And you can milk the crowd if you do it right. You can,
Jeff Hardy versus The Undertaker on Raw, ladder match. That was a perfect example. Everybody was like, well, if he faces The Undertaker, he's going to lose. Oh, it's a ladder match. Undertaker's never done a ladder match. Like, if you're ever going to win, it's going to be now. And so many times they give you that. It's not a false finish because it's a kick out, but it was kind of a false finish of him climbing up with nobody there and potentially being able to grab the title. Just certain moments like that where we all know it's scripted, we all know it's make believe, we all know yada yada, but they can make you suspend that disbelief for even a little bit and make you feel like, oh, they're finally going to do this, or they might do this, or you never knew this was going to happen. Those are the moments where you're just like, okay, yep, this affirms my fanhood by a lot.
right. And I think there's times, um, especially when I was doing the GWF stuff, right, where you're trying to be too smart, right? You're trying to like, oh, I know what's gonna happen next because I've been doing this for 7 days a week for God knows how long. I know what they're gonna do. I can see what's happening, and you know what? It's more fun now that I got disconnected for a while, right? Like I didn't watch day to day wrestling for years, right? And then I came back, and now just to approach it of like, okay, I don't have to overanalyze and think, oh well, they'd never give that guy the title. Like, no, you know what? Just watch the damn thing. Like, treat it for what it is. I just had a shitty day at work. I don't need to be sitting here working my brain watching a male soap opera with two guys are, fake beating the crap out of each other. Just enjoy the damn show. And it honestly, that goes so much further now of just being able to enjoy it and just being able to say, I wonder what they're gonna do next. Like, I'll tell you, just having that back
It's like
makes
being a kid
everything
again.
so much better. It really is.
So I've always said to people that didn't like watching wrestling on TV, going to a live event, there's nothing like it because you have all those people in an arena that are loving it, that are fans, that are cheering. It's like its own little subculture, and you're able to not focus on specific things like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. I knew this person was going to run in, like you are when you're sitting on your couch. You're just in the moment. And this last year, 2 years, there's been so many times while sitting on my couch where that's happened, where you don't have to overanalyze or overthink, even though we're doing a podcast right now and talking about it and overthinking. But during the actual match, and not really doing that. You're just sitting there enjoying it. Like, I wasn't able to watch Survivor Series live, so I watched it the day after on my friend's couch that I was crashing with in Buffalo. And I was just, I woke up at 8 a.m. Everybody else was still sleeping. I turned on Survivor Series and I just got to enjoy Survivor Series on my phone. And I was fine with that. I wasn't thinking one thing or the other. Obviously, I still hope The Rock showed up just because I want to see where that story is going to go. But I wasn't trying to dissect. I was just trying to enjoy the show. And when you can have those moments, yeah, it is like being a kid again. I agree, especially with the many years of running GWF, where now I will say back in the day, I used to be right more than wrong because it was very simple to know where they're going. Oh, John Cena's here. He wins. He's held the title for 9 months. Yeah, he probably loses tonight. Oh, he did. Okay. Oh, he gets a rematch tomorrow. Yeah, he's gonna win it back. Oh, he did. Okay. So there are so many moments like that from the past where now I feel like because they have the new people kind of in charge that are willing to adapt with the times and the stories, that it's a little bit harder to know. Like I thought Cody was finishing his story last year, like the first title shot. I was like, yeah, he beats Roman, there it is, and nope. And I was just like, oh, okay, that I didn't necessarily see that happening. I don't necessarily like it, which I still don't when I look back at it. Even though we got a great WrestleMania 40, I still think it was okay if he would have beat him at WrestleMania 39. I still think WrestleMania 40 was a bigger build, and it was
Yeah.
great because of Rock and Drew, Seth, and everything else, but he could have won at WrestleMania 39, and you could have done a different match at WrestleMania 40, which potentially could have been CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes, both coming from AEW. You never know. You move one little thing, and it changes the whole complexity of everything. But I have definitely enjoyed being able to just watch more than analyzing, unless I'm having a conversation with somebody about wrestling. Like otherwise, I'm just sitting there to enjoy trying to relive that stuff as a kid. Because as a kid, you didn't know any of this stuff. You were just watching that male soap opera, thinking they were beating the crap out of each other and wanting to, hey, that's a cool move. I'd really like to perform that on my friend and put him through a table and maybe through like a wall or something. Like that's what was going through my head when I was a kid.
Or you
Uh,
had hardcore matches were the big thing in the
oh yeah.
Attitude Era. Oh yeah, let's get the trash cans out, the kendo sticks and tacks, and oh, he's gonna break something over his head. Yeah, okay. You know what? As fun as that time was, and going to ECW matches and stuff during was a event in itself. Um, I'm kind of glad we're a little bit past that. Like, the stuff we see during War Games is way tamer. That's fine. We don't need the insanity of the hardcore matches back, please.
I always like I always love the 24/7 rule. I thought it was so funny and
Yeah.
so fun. We did that with some of my friends where we'd just randomly be walking home from school and one of us would try to pin the other one. And then like we'd do sleepovers, and we didn't have phones back then like now, because now you could just take the picture and be like, I can prove that I pinned you. But we used to be in big arguments like, I pinned you while you were sleeping. No, you didn't. I would have woken up. And I remember all that stuff. To be a kid again. Now we're old and gray.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. So the other promo that I want to talk about from Raw was the New Day 10-year celebration, where obviously they had been planting the seeds that Xavier was going to turn heel, but now you got both Kofi and Xavier turning heel, going against Big E in a amazing promo. Like Big E's there trying to champion them, saying, "Hey, I'll be back. I'm still not cleared yet, but I'm gonna be here for you guys, and we can remember where we were." And then being like, "You broke your neck. So what? Other people did, and they came back. Like, where were you? Like now after we've been at each other's throats for a while, now you're gonna choose to come back? Like, if you wanted to be here, you would." Oh, it reminded me a lot of the Miz Daniel Bryan promo from Talking Smack, where the Miz talked about Daniel Bryan about, I wrestle the way I do so I don't get hurt. Why do you say you want to wrestle? You could leave. You could go to a different company. You can go get cleared. You can go do this and that. Why don't you do it? Because you're a coward. Yada yada. Like it felt real, even though obviously this one, that was a literal shoot. This was obviously planned and everything, and it was a great heel turn, but it felt like a shoot. Like they were like, why haven't you been here? And you did this. So what? I got hurt. I came back. I was here for you. Like, what are we doing? Like, it was such good work, and I really hope that a New Day heel run, which they haven't been since the very beginning, could do monumental things, especially because that tag team division right now is weak as hell.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only part that confuses me a little bit is that you were setting up almost for a split, right? They're at each other's throat. Okay, classic tag team trope since the beginning of time. They hate each other. Eventually, they're going to go their own way. And now, magically, they found their common enemy and they're cool again. Like, Oh, okay.
I think we'll hear the next time they cut a promo. I think that's
Yeah.
when you hear more from Kofi, as in like, you know, we were Xavier and I talked and yada yada yada, and then we were going to like leave or something. Like I have to imagine that yes, because I agree with you. It did seem out of left field, but that's one of the reasons that I liked it, just because I wasn't expecting both of them necessarily to turn heel on Big E. Um, but I'm still expecting them to explain it. They've done a pretty good job of that lately, where something happens and then it doesn't necessarily make 100% sense, but they try to explain it. And I'd say about 60 to 70% when they explain it, you're like, okay, yes, that makes sense. And the other 30%, you're like, well, that was dumb. That's a stupid reason. So I'm hoping it's in that 60 to 70% range where you're like, okay, this makes sense. This is why you're sticking with Xavier. Even though you guys have been doing this, you might have seen his point. And he started saying, like, if Big E was still here, he'd be doing all this stuff and he didn't love us. And like, he's just gonna, he might have even said, like, we're doing our 10-year anniversary. I think Big E's gonna show up and try to make it all about him. He's gonna come out and be like, I'll be there for you. And then that's exactly what happened. And then that's the switch that turned Kofi and saying, screw it. Like, you were right. And now you and I will just do this together. We don't need him. We don't need these people. It's just us. Like, I'm hoping there's something like that, because otherwise I'll be just like you in the sense of, well, didn't exactly, like, you didn't tie that thread together.
Yeah. That's the only. Otherwise, it was. Yeah, it was fine. Honestly, New Day hasn't been heel since they debuted. Like, weren't
Correct.
they supposed to be like just obnoxious heels
Yep.
from the beginning? Um, yeah, the turn they took, I'm glad they did. Again, one of those things where they just kind of listened to the crowd and they did their own thing. But yeah, it just felt it's like yeah, they've been just kind of like, oh no, I hate you for a months now, and now it's just kind of like, yeah, yeah, we're fine, like we're cool. Oh, okay, yeah. If there's a good reason, like, yeah, we were doing that on purpose to draw Biggie out because we wanted to see where he, truly lied. Whatever. There's your 60%. Okay, I guess. Like, it's not great, but okay. Like, I guess I can't argue it if that's what you're gonna say. Okay, we all move on. Big deal. So that's about it. It's just like, yeah, see where again. Okay, see where they go from there. Yeah, there is room in the tag division, I think, for a heel team. I mean, I guess your Judgment Day is your heel champion, so I don't know. Bet you'll get it off them, but uh, fresh coat of paint, I guess. And not to say that the New Day was stale, but they certainly aren't what they were.
I mean,
Um,
they're definitely, in my opinion, they've been stale for about like 3 or 4 years since, or whenever, like when Kofi, they've had moments of being stale and then relevant and then stale and then relevant. So I'm surprised that they've lasted 10 years. But like Kofi Mania was amazing and the New Day was there for that. When Big E won his title, New Day was there for that, and that was huge. Obviously, Brock Lesnar ended both of those reigns. Um, there's so many memes around about like a black world champion wins the title, and then there's Brock Lesnar. He did it to The Rock. He did it to Kofi. Did it to Big E. Like, brutal. Um, but I'm interested to see where they go from it, just because Kofi's fine. I don't mind Kofi at all, but he's also got to be getting up there, like in his mid to late 40s. Xavier a little bit younger, but he's never really done anything in the sport. Maybe this is something that can help elevate him at one point, so every member of the New Day maybe wins a world title, even though he's not on the same level, in my opinion, as like the world champions right now. Like, they're so far above and beyond him, unless they really go drastic over this next year of heel New Day and like build him up to something, and then they lie, cheat, and steal to win the title. Then I'm fine with it. But right now, I don't see that happening. Like, there hasn't been like a breakout moment for Xavier like there was for Big E and like there was for Kofi.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if like it's funny. I was gonna say, looking back at like kind of when Big E did it, and when Kofi did it, you almost had a little bit more of a revolving door of championships going on. And I was gonna say, well, you really don't have that. I'm like, well, maybe I guess you can kind of put Damien in that lump a little bit, or kind of came out of nowhere. Maybe not the exactly most deserving, but not also not deserving. It's kind of in that like, well, I don't know if you're in the world title league, but we'll find out. I I don't know if I would put either of the New Day in that place now. Like they both just seem like the aged veterans. Like you're here, you can do some things, but I think your best is probably behind you. I don't not to sound mean saying that, but that it almost feels like there's so many better people than you guys right now. I think your time is you have your place in the company. It's not in the world title picture, unfortunately.
Well, that's why I'm
Tag
wondering
team, like
with the
if they
heel,
want to do a tag title run, sure.
but with the heel them, I wonder if they'll have that ability to ramp up that promo work, have some matches and feuds that puts them in that level. I don't know, and I doubt it. But without that, there's no chance of being taken seriously, and even for Xavier to ever have a shot of winning like a world title, because he won King of the Ring what, like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, something like that, and it was basically a joke. Only this past year did the King of the Ring mean something again, with Gunther winning it and with Nia winning it, with Triple H taking over. Like only then did King of the Ring mean something. When Xavier won it and I think it was Zelina won it, it meant nothing. And everybody that wins the damn thing doesn't need to be king this, king that. It worked for King Booker for a while, but you can be king of the ring and not act like a king and a douche. Like, it's okay to just be like, this is another achievement of mine. I did it because I'm better than all of you. I don't need to act on this persona of being a king. Like, that just feels so lazy. And they did that with Xavier for a while. So I'm hoping that as a heel, they have an ability to grow those characters more, maybe be up in the upper echelon, but it's just yeah, I do think their great days are behind them, but I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised.
This feels like your last chance. Like
Yeah.
not in the company, not to be fired, possibly, maybe, but not meaning it that way. It's like, well, either you turn heel and we'll give you a shot, or you guys can keep doing the same thing and you're probably just gonna get relegated to, you know, a weekend show for the most part, and every once in a
My
while on
idea
a Raw.
I'm thinking that this was probably their idea more so than like Triple H's. Like, my guess is they've been trying to pitch going heel for a while, because I'm sure they've probably felt pretty stale, especially since the Big E injury. Like, we're just doing the same stuff over and over. Maybe we'll win a tag title match. Maybe sometimes we'll put on a hell of a tag title match, or a tag team match. But more or less, we're kind of jobbing. We're helping out the good guys sometimes. We're not really doing much. So, like, this is, yeah, potentially our last chance to do something impactful and meeting day as a tag team, as New Day, as ourselves.
It almost feels like they've done a pretty good job on SmackDown as far as keeping the tag team semi relevant. Especially with Machine Guns coming in, and they've kind of had that thing going with Street Profits and Bloodline, and even DIY. They got their own thing going on now, but you've had a couple decent, like, okay, there was a decent collection of tag teams that actually were getting TV time for a while. It just feels like that didn't happen. Like that's not happening on Raw. Oh, like it feels like the tag titles, and they're making jokes of it. Like hey, when's the last time you defended those titles that you have? Finn Balor. Well, that's whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, yeah, maybe that's a point. Maybe it's
I
time to
will
do something
say,
with the tag division.
I'm glad that they're at least acknowledging it and that it's a heel team having the titles. How do you extend
Right.
out your championship reign? You don't defend the title. Like, I was champion for a year. You didn't defend it. That doesn't matter. Like, I was champion for a year. I don't have to defend it. If no one's forcing me to defend it, I was champion for a year. Technically, GWF shut down. Canyon's been champion since like 2016, 14, whenever the hell we closed it. Like 8, 10 years. Like, there we go. I have the longest reign of all time. Like, no one's made me defend
It's a
it.
it's a hell of a reign.
I'm telling you. Um, put Bruno Sammartino to shame. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I at least like again that it's a heel doing it, not a face. And but yeah, they kind of almost feel like decorative on Finn's and um oh God, what's the other guy's name in New Day? Not New Day, in Judgment Day. Oh, that's how irrelevant
I,
he
res-
kind
I can see him.
of. So can
I
I.
can picture his face.
Uh, we'll call him the worst member of of Judgment Day, minus Carlito. So okay, let's move on to Saturday night's main event because that's coming up in like 10 days, 9 days, something like that, I think. And so right now the matches on that card is obviously the tournament finals for the Women's United States Championship. Not really much to talk about here because we don't know who's going to be in it. I know that it's going to be Bailey versus Chelsea in the semifinals. They've got a quarterfinals match tomorrow, which is Naomi, Tiffany Stratton, and Elektra. The winner of that will go on to face Mission, and they'll go on to face the winner of Bailey and Chelsea. So, like, I don't know. My assumption would be just the way if they wanted to be like the best title match, it should probably be Bailey versus Tiffany Stratton. But I would prefer a Chelsea Green versus Mission. I'm probably butchering that name, but that's fine. I think I would prefer that just because the other people are right there at the world title or have been in the world title. They don't need to be involved in this secondary title. Like, let these other people beat you to elevate that title once they win it, more than you winning the title just because you're a bigger name.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know. I Tiffany's already got Money in the Bank. Like to me, it doesn't make sense to also put her in the title match. They can make it make sense. Don't get me wrong, but my initial says like, probably shouldn't win. Like it feels like you should be cashing that in later. And then, but if you're also the champion and also Money in the Bank, there's nothing there.
right.
But I mean, there's something to be said like Bailey versus Naomi. Again, they've been friends, that they've made no, you know, they've not hidden that. They've been the friends forever in the SmackDown women's division. Chelsea Green is more of your traditional heel. So maybe her versus Naomi makes sense. Uh, Michin or Mia Yim or whatever the heck she wants to call herself today, um, has been fine. Really my thing, but she's been fine. Elektra Lopez, again, just not really seeing it. But again, maybe it gives that stable something to do if they give her the title too. Because they've kind of been relegated to obscurity. They show up like, oh yeah, I forgot about these guys. Like, oh, yeah. I don't know. Like that. If I had to guess, I would say just for the fun of it, it would be Bayley versus Naomi. Like that just feels, and then that gives you the opportunity of Nia Jax coming in at some point or Tiffany coming in to screw with either of them because they're both been a thorn in her side for ever at this point. So I don't know. That's just my initial feeling. Is again, it's a face versus face matchup, but I think those work fine in most situations. Versus as opposed to doing heel versus heel. So, and it being a Saturday night's main event, they are both popular on the roster, so wouldn't be a terrible move versus putting somebody, no offense to Michin or Elektra Lopez, or even Chelsea Green. I don't know how popular they are on said roster and Saturday night's main event being a PLE level show. I don't know. Like it doesn't feel like they would make the cut. But again, that's just me being me.
Yeah, I just want to hear Chelsea Green be announced as the champion because that just to me will be hilarious if they elongate her name and just have fun with it. And I think she has a very good character, even though it doesn't seem to be like that deep. Like I think that character works, and she seems to me, at least right now, like a mid card person makes sense for her. But I could also see them doing Bailey versus Naomi, and that would make sense, especially if they put Naomi over. Because she really has been kind of floundering since she came back. She hasn't been doing anything overly major. She's been involved in other people's programs, not really her own.
And it's a good, you know what? Honestly, as far as an inaugural champion, I think both of them are, either Bailey or Naomi are fine choices as being the first title holder. You're both former champions. Nothing wrong with holding the mid card belt. And it makes it worth that much more for when the next person wins it. You're actually starting to build that next person up. Because, I mean, let's face it, that's what this belt's really supposed to be, is building that next challenger. So, putting it on somebody like, Michin or Elektra Lopez out of the gate is not bad. It also gives your, former main eventers right now something to do heading into the next main event, and then, Rumble and Elimination Chamber. They don't have to be in the world title picture right now. You can focus more on what might be a brewing thing between Nia Jackson, Tiffany Stratton, or Nia Jackson, anybody else at this point, with Tiffany kind of waiting there in the wings. So we'll see.
So then, speaking of the women's title, though, different women's title, but also defended is Liv Morgan versus Io Sky. Yeah, Io Sky to me is great in the ring. It can put on some really good matches. I don't care about her outside of the ring. I just don't. I don't think there's anything there. I thought the only time where she had a really good feud was with Bailey, with everything with damage control. That was it. Nothing before that, nothing after that. Like, nothing's been, from my side, like, great character work. She's not on the level of other people. And maybe it's the language barrier, maybe it's something else, but it's just not connecting with me at all. Um, but is great in the ring. And then Liv Morgan has it all. She's great on the microphone. She is that great scaredy cat heel that eventually gets the upper hand and usually uses her brain to do it, and is good in the ring, even though she is as tiny as she is. And the heel work that she's done with Rhea Ripley, and the whole Dom swerve, and basically kicking out the two founders of Judgment Day and kind of making it in her own image-ish with Finn Balor, like, has been really good. I don't see her. Well, I do see her losing the title because of Rhea Ripley. If there was no Rhea Ripley, I don't see her losing the title. But I have to imagine that they're not going to make her lose the title if it's not back to Rhea. Maybe, but I just don't see it happening to somebody else.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything I would set up. Again, I think Io Sky. I mean, the only thing you could say is Io Sky makes that transitional champion. Again, great in the ring, nothing wrong with her, but she's almost like that stepping stone. Like, if you wanted to get it off Liv and give it to Rhea without one beating the other, Io's the way to do it. That's the whole screw job thing, right? With Brett, like, he didn't want to lose it to Michaels, but he would lose it to somebody else who would then lose it to Michaels. Wasn't that the whole thing?
Well, that or
It's
he was fine with dropping it the next night on Raw, even though he wasn't under contract the next night on Raw, because he didn't want to lose in Canada.
so whatever the case may be. It feels like that situation minus the drama. But
Right.
if you want to elongate, like, oh, look, Liv lost the title. Oh, look, Rhea's champion again. But you never beat me. You didn't beat me for the title. Okay. I could be sold on that. I don't see this match ending cleanly. But Rhea's coming out. She's gonna. This is still going. This Liv and Rhea thing is going to be going much further, and unfortunately for Io, she's getting caught in the crossfire. This match is not going to end cleanly, especially after Raw.
Yeah.
This is just going to keep going, right? Like,
My assumption is WrestleMania, Liv versus Rhea 1-on-1, maybe even like a steel cage match or something. where they can't get out. Um, but yeah, it has all the makings of a WrestleMania blow off thing, but that's still another 3-4 months away. So how do they sustain that? And it might be, as you said, with the transitional part, if they do go to EO. I still don't think they would do. I think Rhea wins the title at WrestleMania like she did last year, but holds it for more than a day when she got injured.
Yeah, I think this match will be fine. But Rhea's coming out, and she's gonna go in there right after Liv, and this match is gonna end up in some kind of
Might be DQ.
schmoz. Yeah,
Yeah. All right. So next we have another Judgment Day. It's Gunther and Finn Balor. Obviously, Finn Balor got involved, costing Damian the title, and then costing him now his rematch at Survivor Series. So now Finn has wanted the shot, and now is going to get his shot against Gunther. We talked about it a bit. If this might be the reason why Gunther feels a little bit more tweenerish right now because of Finn, which neither one of us like, but it might be why they're doing it. I don't see Finn Balor winning, even though I would love him to be world champion again at some point. I still want to see the Demon back at some point. Like they've withheld that from us for so many years. We didn't even get Finn Balor versus The Undertaker, which we had a chance for, which still annoys me. Same with The Undertaker versus Sting. That annoys me that we could have got that. But there are so many things in this match that make me care and not care. Care because it's the world title. Care because I do like Gunther in the ring and his character when he's more of the badass that he used to be. I like the interchanging with Finn and or the interactions with Finn and Damian because they've been building this feud for a while. I just don't like that they make the world title feel less significant because of this feud, and that the world title should be the be all end all, and they're fighting. And it's not like Drew McIntyre and Punk, where Punk specifically said, "You came out here and you said you prayed that I'd get injured so that you would have a world title match. Well, as long as I'm standing, you will not win this world title." And he cost him the world title as soon as he won it. He then cost him his rematch at Clash of the Castle. Like, that made sense to me. Like, Punk was there for that. This one doesn't really have that same level, where even though it's a bigger feud than necessarily the world title, it doesn't make as much sense, or the characters aren't making me believe it makes more sense than the world title.
yeah. This is a Priest Balor feud with the world title kind of dragging in its coattails, uh, which is really weird because Gunther should just be out there being the badass dominant champion that he is, right? Like that they built him for so long to be that, and it just seems like a weird about face. Um, Nothing's happening in this match, right? We just saw what happened Raw. Priest got taken out by Judgment Day, right? So now in this, what's going to happen? Well, unless they announce something stupid for Raw, right? Like, well, Priest is going to come out and cost Finn Balor his title shot because turnabout's fair play, right? Of course he is. And then that's going to, obviously this Balor Priest feud is going to lead into probably further down the line. I don't know if it's going to go as far as WrestleMania, but it could. It would give them something to do. The question I ask is, well, who's next? If I have to look at the current Raw roster right now, if I had to pick another world title challenger, who is it?
So
Everybody's in something.
yeah, everybody's in something besides for Finn and Damian, I guess.
Right.
And maybe they set up a Royal Rumble where it's Damian versus Finn versus Gunther for the title.
That's exactly what I was thinking. This ends up in kind of a Priest comes out, he costs Balor his shot, and now you're setting yourself up. They're going to say, listen, you guys can't stay out of your own matches. You're both going to be in the match. And now you set up a triple threat. And again, you can easily splinter that off into Finn
Yeah.
Priest doing their own thing, and eventually Gunther gets another challenger. But right now, everybody's tied up into something else. Unless there's somebody I'm completely forgetting, but it just feels like all the main event level players are in their own, I'm not saying better or worse thing, but they're in their own thing that's going somewhere. Punk's got his own thing that he wants to do. I guess he's the only one that maybe could fit in this where he says, I want Gunther next.
Well,
Seems a little bit early.
Seth
Well,
too, but I don't think either one of them get a hold of Gunther until if they're going to. I still feel like it's going to be Cena and Gunther at WrestleMania. Not that I think it should be, but if Cena's going to win his 17th world title, which will probably be at WrestleMania, but if Punk or Seth get to Gunther in the sense of a world title match, my assumption it wouldn't be until WrestleMania or after, because I feel like they're both going to be chasing that title. So at the Royal Rumble, so at Elimination Chamber type of matches.
and I guess I'm confused because that's where Punk came out and he's pointing to the imaginary WrestleMania sign, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess if he beats Gunther before then, technically that would put him in WrestleMania
Yeah.
in technically a main event. So maybe he is next. Maybe that's what he means by I have plans. I know where I'm going. Maybe he shows up and steps in Gunther's face. And honestly, I would be perfectly fine with that because you have a true heel and a true face at this point in time that
Yeah.
you need. And if that went on a couple months, perfect. It just feels like Gunther's reign just doesn't feel long enough, even if it ends at WrestleMania. It just feels short for somebody of his stature.
Yeah.
Um, but what do I know? If maybe that's it, maybe Punk is the next answer. Balor and Priest can't settle their own stuff, so he moves on, and Punk steps in that picture. I don't know. Yeah, I guess what is Seth doing too? I don't know. Maybe they fight over it. I guess there's a lot of things that could happen here, but
Yeah.
uh, it feels like unfortunately Gunther's wrapped in a Judgment Day feud
Yeah.
instead of doing his own thing. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. Same. And then lastly is the main event, which we were wrong to think that it was going to be at Survivor Series. They wanted to, which is probably a good thing because Survivor Series was cut quite long because of those War Game matches. Both the War Game matches were like 45 minutes apiece, so that's already an hour and a half out of your program with just two matches. So they're saving it for Saturday night's main event, which I'm not that upset about. It gives them longer to keep building the story. We talked last time about the build to the story, which we all were, you, me, and Dave were like, it's better than we thought it could be, especially how they did it. Like it didn't feel so run of the mill. It felt better. Especially because they're kind of doing almost the same story with Seth Rollins. Like Cody teamed with Roman Reigns after everything that he did to Kevin Owens. Seth Rollins upset with Sammy and with Jay and obviously with Punk for other reasons, but they all teamed with Roman. And the way that they're able to do this, I mean, the heels, even though Seth isn't a heel, everything Kevin says is right. Like, there's nothing that he's said that's wrong. He's 100% right. Like, he was around when the other people weren't, and he was fighting these people, and they just kept double teaming, triple teaming, coming up with every dirty tactic to continue their reign at the top. And he tried to get help, and then his best friend basically betrayed him with Sami Zayn, and he went to the Bloodline before eventually coming back to his side. Like, he had to go through all of that and try to take out the Bloodline kind of single-handedly and then having some help. And now Roman comes back and everybody's like being like, oh, okay, no big deal. Like, hey, no, I went through hell for years and now you guys are just doing this. No, screw you guys. So I love when a heel can do that when it makes sense, because even though they're still the heel and they're supposed to be the bad guy, like if there's logic behind it, I'm on board for your heel run and everything else. So I'm looking forward to the match. I haven't been excited for like a Kevin Owens match in a while, just because it's always felt lesser. Like I enjoyed, don't get me wrong, the match with him, Randy Orton, and Logan Paul at WrestleMania was a hoot. Like it was just a fun match, even though it was had some serious components. But everything like the SmackDown before, where Kevin Owens and Randy Orton were on like the golf cart riding to the other arena to go try to find, or they were fighting with Logan Paul and I think not A Train. What's his name?
A-Town Down. What's this?
Yes.
Austin Theory and
Austin Theory and
uh,
the other
Grayson
one.
Waller.
Yep. So like everything with that was great, and it was like still impactful, but yet funny. And him and Randy Orton were great together, and then they had their feud. So I enjoyed that feud, and now I'm getting the Kevin Owens that has been the Kevin Owens I've wanted for a while again. So I'm excited for it. Cody's still being Cody, which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with Cody. He is so fucking over with the crowd and with like obviously your wife and your daughter. Like he has them eating out of the palm of his hand, which is great. That's what you want. And I don't have a problem with him. I think he's good in the ring. I think he's good on the microphone. And I don't see Kevin Owens winning, but I'm excited to see the match and what story they can tell within it.
I mean, if me being me, Orton's playing some factor, right?
I would assume.
Right? I know you kind of written him out storyline wise, and I know neck injury and pile driver and what that, but is what it is. He's got to come. He's got to come back and play some kind of factor, and that's your next feud for those two, right? You got to finish the Orton Owens storyline that you technically started and didn't finish.
Or Orton goes heel. Teams with Kevin. Maybe he's like, Kevin was right. Like the pile driver knocked some sense into me. And you did team with Roman Reigns, who made my life living hell. They put me on the shelf. Like
I guess that goes back to our New Day argument. Like, okay, if you can make that make sense and completely overlook the fact that, well, you did pile drive and hurt my neck. Okay, cool. But I guess I don't see that. Orton at the stage of his career, I don't see him like flip flopping that quickly. It just feels like they need to finish that because they didn't, right? Even at Crown Jewel was just a fight. They came back to SmackDown and I was at. It wasn't even a match. It was just a couple moves in the ring until a pile driver happened, and that was the end of that. So they've extended that a little bit. They're gonna finish it. Now that might be leading into next main event to January. And then you know what? The Rumble throws everything all into whack because everybody wants a shot at the Rumble. So what's going on then? And whoever wins that's going to determine a lot of your WrestleMania plans too, right? Maybe Punk wins the Rumble this year. And who the hell knows what's going on there? And now maybe that sets up Punk Gunther. I don't know. Or maybe worse, maybe something. I don't know. Like it's just, and maybe Punk challenges Cody, does a little heel turn, and the favor is Heyman comes back as his manager for a night. Yeah. Because he needs him. I don't, right. Something stupid. So many ways things can change in 5 months. And you got again, Rumble changes a lot of things. Because you got one guy coming out of there that basically drives the rest. Much like Cody choosing to face Roman. Well, that left the Raw wide open. Well, now you got your Elimination Chamber winner going to that one. Right? Like,
well, you've also got the Rumble where the interactions within the Rumble set up matches at WrestleMania. So you always got that. Like, that would be my guess right now. Like, I don't necessarily know if Randy Orton will come back Saturday night's main event, or will he save it for the Rumble? And then him and Kevin will have a match at Mania on one of the nights of Mania to have their blow-off match. I see that possibly being more of a likely outcome, so that they can so there's another solid match at WrestleMania. Plus, I don't know what else they'd be doing at WrestleMania anyway if they're not having a match with one another. Granted, as you said, they're still 5 months away. There's a lot that can happen, But like right with them building it, that kind of makes sense that that'll be a match at WrestleMania if they keep him out. If they bring him back, then that seems like a long time to keep that feud going if they haven't had their official match yet. Like I feel like you continue it in the Rumble and then you put them off at WrestleMania to go after one another.
If I had to guess, I think Owens gets himself DQ'd somehow. He goes nuts. He just starts going crazy. He's beating the hell out of Cody by any means necessary. He sets him up for a pile driver, and Orton's music hits, and out he comes. And that sends your crowd home happy right there.
Yeah.
Yep, Cody didn't win. But here comes Orton to the rescue. And yay, everybody happy. That's just my guess. Like, because that's the way to do it. Like, because that keeps everybody strong. Right? Because now that keeps Owens strong. Because you've built him as this just warhorse right now, beating the crap out of Orton twice, and he's maniacal, right?
Yeah.
That okay, he snapped. He started using the chairs. He busted out a chair and he busted out a tail, put him through a tail. He beat the absolute hell out of Cody. Stopped caring about the title, but he's just beating the hell out of him. And he went to set him up for this devastating pile driver, and Orton wouldn't let it happen. And
I love that brought back the pile driver, like to be this big move. Even though there are other moves that look more impactful than it, like the pile driver has a history of people getting hurt with it. So I like that it was used as a huge deal to send Randy Orton out for a while. Like I can't think, besides for the punt, which is probably what Randy Orton would do to Kevin Owens. Like the punt was used for a while to take people off television for months at a time. You just get kicked in the side of the head, which is basically just means, hey, I got a concussion. And I feel like the pile driver is the same way. I broke my neck or something sprained or compressed a disc or a concussion. I don't think there's many moves in wrestling anymore that are like the DDT is used in almost every match. A super kick now used to be the be all end all, and it's used in every match. Pedigrees have been start to be used by like 6 different people now. That maybe it's an homage, but that used to be a very protected finisher. And now the stunner, at least that used to be the springboard stunner. Everybody kicks out of that. But Kevin Owens has his stunner, which people mostly don't kick out of, so that's at least good. But there's just so many moves out there that you don't take seriously. You know they're not going to end the match, or you know that they're not as impactful as they used to be in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And now, so them bringing back the pile driver and making it feel like this big deal, I like that. I like when certain moves are protected. I look at AJ Styles when he was in New Japan. He had like a 2 or 3 year run where nobody kicked out of the Styles Clash. Nobody. So when somebody finally did, it was a huge fucking deal. Like they protected that finisher like there was no tomorrow. And it was only after he accidentally hurt somebody, because when you're doing the Styles Clash, most of the time you're supposed to like tuck your head, but in that one you don't tuck your head. You do the opposite so that when you hit the ground, it hits your chest, not your neck. But somebody in New Japan didn't do that, broke their neck, and it became a very like, because of that, which was just an accident, it made the realism of the move more impactful. So it got protected like there was no tomorrow. The pile driver now could be that type of move that is protected. Maybe it should still be illegal in the ring if they want to go with that story. But if someone's setting you up for it, like that could be a huge thing, and especially if they do it right, which hopefully they do.
So, I mean, the easy way, right, is like, this is an unsanctioned match.
Yep.
Right? Old school way. This is unsanctioned. Whatever happens here, we're not liable. This is just a fight. And they'll make a deal out of it. Like, listen, this is unsanctioned. If they want to use the pile driver,
maybe they set that up for the Royal Rumble. Like, so obviously the match of Saturday night's main event is a sanctioned match. So the pile driver is not legal. But if Kevin Owens does all those things and wants to hit the pile driver, or even if he does, yeah, setting that up. Like, I want my rematch against him. I know I have the title, but I just want to kick his ass. And him being like, no, I don't need to kick you. I already beat your ass. I don't even want the title. I just want to kick your ass. And then the only way I'll agree is if it's an unsanctioned match. And Yeah, that could be a good Royal Rumble match.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they keep, honestly, I think Kevin's playing this role very well, right? Like, just again, he needs Cody is such a babyface and such beloved by pretty much most of the crowd right now. He needs that absolutely evil character to go against, and if you have somebody just off the rails, and honestly, if you put it to that level of like, I don't even care about the title. Like honestly, if I saw a point in the match where he has Cody down, and picks up the title, like it's lying in the ring or something, he picks it up and looks at it and just like throws it away, and then goes back to beating up Cody, like to symbolize like this doesn't mean anything to me. Violence does.
Yeah.
Like wow, build into like feed into that, and then you just honestly you could throw that character, much like we were just talking about with Drew, right? Like go and just be that just big bad badass that he can be. Do it with Kevin because he can pull off a great match also with anybody. He's got a great move set. He can obviously play this role. Let him do it. Like
So
we were talking about who are the heels.
do you remember him in the indie scene? It was
I don't know.
okay, so he was Kevin Steen at that point.
Right.
Kill Kevin Kill. Um, and they changed it obviously to WWE Fight Owens Fight. I wonder, especially with them now going to like Netflix. Granted, he's on SmackDown, but I wonder if there's a possibility. And one of the things that Nick Khan said is that with them being on Netflix, they're still going to be PG. But they'll also have some of the stories that aren't necessarily PG. But there also won't be censoring the crowds. I wonder if they slowly move, especially if he does what you just said, like the title's there and he's like, the title, I just want to kick your ass. If it morphs into that, kill Owens kill.
And well, SmackDown's going to USA, right? Or is on USA now, right?
It is on USA now, but it goes to potentially 3 hours in January.
So, but that means it's going to cable versus being on
It's
Fox.
better than Fox, right.
Right. So, and they have that previous, relationship with USA to say, well, look what we did on Raw for, yes, we were PG, but we just pushed it. Just not Attitude Era, not some crazy ass shit, but just push it when we have to.
Yeah.
I don't think USA would say no. Again, you're not turning the whole product into that. You're just giving one guy some little edge to his character.
Yeah. And I think he'd use it beautifully. Like him in the indie scene doing that stuff and being that. That's one of the reasons when he came to WWE, I was so excited. And then the first night when he was in NXT and he was a face and he got his nose busted open, but then he turned heel after Sammy won the NXT title for the first time. I was like, oh my God, let's fucking go. And his open challenge with John Cena and all those matches with Cena, amazing. So if they have that ability to do that, like I would be 100% on board for that character and where it goes from there. My only disappointment, he's not winning the title. Now, again, that's fine, especially if you get Randy Orton involved. So let's say you do that match, Saturday Night's main event. They do a non-sanctioned match. He sets up for the pile driver. That's when you hear Randy Orton's music. So pile driver is legal, but it's Randy Orton being like, you're not doing that on my watch. It sets up them for WrestleMania. It leaves Cody open to do something else at WrestleMania. That probably makes more sense to me, and it still kind of protects Kevin's character, even though he's now this more vicious character, but now he gets to take it out on Randy Orton. Like to me, I think that's that long-term storytelling, that if they're able to do it and change Kevin's character to make him more brutal, more sadistic, yeah, I'm on board for it.
And you were talking about like who are the heels left, right? You took your mega heel in Roman Reigns and you turned him face. You need a heel. Man, the power vacuum right there. If Kevin plays that role and he can, listen, the past few weeks, since his actual legitimate turn, I don't know what they're talking about. Screw it. Yeah, I'm like last, the final SmackDown was finally him, admitting or the second final, like because last week was just a regular match, but the week before was him and Cody going at it, finally stating what he's doing. Like, okay, lean into it. You've
Yeah.
you've you've pushed him forward. Make him a heel. You need heels to keep your baby faces popular.
Yeah, you need good heels too, not just heels, but like people that people want to hate, not just be indifferent about. Which what Roman was. People wanted to hate him and needed that. That's why you needed an amazing baby face, which ended up being Cody. Because of the run that he had with the Royal Rumble, with the WrestleMania match, with the matches with Seth Rollins, and especially like the Hell in the Cell match where his pec was just completely like fucked up. Like I'm sure he earned so many more fans off of that match, which was still I rewatched that match. I want to say earlier this year. It's such a good match. Um, yeah, if you can have those amazing baby faces for those great heels, it's great. If you can have those great heels for those great baby faces, you're only gonna. That's the only way you push your product forward. That's the only way you get more eyes on it. That's the only way that you can be at that top level of wrestling where you're firing on all your cylinders.
And you don't, I mean, being a workhorse champion sounds great, in theory. Like, oh, I want to defend against anybody who wants a shot. But realistically, it ends up watering down your champion because this month I'm facing this guy. This month I'm facing this guy. Oh, I had a couple matches on the weekly show, faced a couple guys maybe that didn't really, weren't in this league, but we'll give them a little bump. Pay-per-view different guy, pay-per-view different guy, pay-per-view different guy. Okay. Well, you're beating everybody and you're running out of people. Like you could if you fought 10 different guys throughout the year, who's left? Right? Like you need that person that didn't just handily beat. You need that person that they have to hate. You need that person that's actually challenging you. Right? So yeah, maybe you didn't win. Maybe he beat your ass and you won, but via DQ because he just went nuts. Yeah, you let that roll for a couple months. That helps, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the end of the Saturday night's main event card right now. Granted, it could change. We still got another SmackDown tomorrow, Raw, and then SmackDown. So who knows if they add anything else in. We didn't talk about GWF at all, which I'm fine with. I felt like we talked about a lot this last time, and there was a lot of wrestling stuff to cover this time around with Survivor Series, Raw, Saturday night's main event. I forgot when we were planning this that Saturday night's main event was so close to like just Survivor Series. It's only like 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks apart. It's not much time, which is why I'm glad it's not. It's supposed to be PLE level, but it's not. Like I don't feel like there's going to be any honest title changes. There could be, but it'd be surprising to me. Like I feel like it's just a filler show for them to be having this other show. I'm not sure if it's supposed to air on NBC or not.
It is.
Yeah, so obviously that's the whole point of it being like on there. So they could just because it's on NBC, but I feel like it's just another way to put their face more in the media and more like, hey, we're still doing this stuff and we're heading towards WrestleMania again. You guys remember how great that was last year? We're doing it again.
And then they're talking about bringing, some legends. I think I just read that they're talking about bringing legends, to make an appearance and stuff. So you're going to have some throwbacks to, the 80s and 90s, Saturday night's main events. I would say it's like a PLE light. It's going to probably be better than a Raw or SmackDown on average. But it may not be, it's definitely not a WrestleMania. It's probably not even a Big Four. It's, where would it rank?
There's another one in a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess on the plus side is there's no December PLE. So this kind of takes its place. Yes, it's kind of early, but I guess for me, I do kind of like the fact that for the most part, the PLEs only have like 5 matches. You're not getting like 10 matches every PLE. Like, okay, here's 5. Like, and then if you have something like this 2 weeks later, you only have a few more matches. At least you don't have to, you weren't just overloaded with like 10 pay-per-view matches, and now you're coming back with another like 5 pay-per-view level matches. Like, no,
It's
this
also
fits out.
different. Sometimes it's different people. Like EO versus Liv, they were in War Games, but they weren't defending the title. Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens weren't in this at all. The women's U.S. title inaugural, there's a possibility that both the women in that match weren't in Survivor Series at all. Finn Balor wasn't at Survivor Series besides the cost Damian the title, and obviously Gunther was. So like, it's I will say that part's good. Like they have enough talent where you don't have to be on every single card just to fill out the card because we don't have enough people or we don't have enough talented people. There should be enough stories and enough talent to go around.
Yeah, I think this will be fine. Like, I don't think that you're gonna be sick of somebody after this. We'll put it that way.
Right. All right. Well, I feel like we've talked to death on certain things. So, anything else you want to add, either about Canada, about my team getting their ass kicked, about GWF, about WWE? Anything else you want to get off your chest?
Listen, I think the Niners have had enough trouble this year. Injuries up the wazoo. It's not fair. I'll leave them alone.
It hurts.
I will state the fact that at Thanksgiving, my mom said something to the fact, she goes, remember when you used to work on that website all the time? I'm like, funny story. Like, yeah, I actually talked to the people who ran it after me. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's weird. Like,
Yeah, I never thought when we were obviously doing the EFED, I knew at that time, I don't think you were in Canada when I first joined. Maybe you were. But you were in Buffalo. I'm in Maine. That's not too far apart, but you're also like, it's an EFED. Dave, at one point, I think we live in either Connecticut or Rhode Island. Like, he doesn't live that far away. I think Amber lives in New York. Bear lives in Chicago. And it's like, everybody's not necessarily that far away, but we're in an EFED. We're probably never going to actually meet. We're never going to hang out. We're never going to we're not going to have conversations on the phone. We're not going to text each other, like that type of stuff, if it wasn't EFED related. And then after the EFED kind of ended, there's a few people like Dave and I keep in contact right now because we're in fantasy football. But after fantasy football is over, like it's usually every couple months, either it's whether it's about a podcast or whether it's just something cool happened with wrestling or something with because he's a Cowboys fan, I'm a 49ers fan. So we're giving each other shit with that. Amber, it's more or less for the podcast. Bear is also in fantasy football, but him and I talk about random things because both of us like our wrestling collectibles. But it's rare. You were one of the people that I talked to, obviously, during GWF of like, hey, help, the website's broke. How do I fix it? Or then after the site ended, it became one of those yearly, maybe, or every other year of just dropping a line, hope everything is going well. Hey, did you hear somebody else was trying to run GWF? And you being like, yeah, I let them run it. I was like, you bastard, stop it. No, they're terrible. I just found an email. God, I want to say it was like 3 years after we closed. And there was this guy that had messaged you about running it. And then he, for whatever reason, messaged me and was running his mouth. I own it now. I do all this, yada, yada, yada. And I remember reaching out to you and be like, hey, this guy got a hold of me. And you're like, yeah, I let him run it. I was like, okay, well, he's fucking annoying. And you messaged me like a week later. And you were like, oh my God, this guy just will not leave me alone. I've pulled all of his access. He wanted one too many things or he said one too many wrong things. And nope, he's done. And I just found that email when I was looking through my sent folder for something else. And I don't send that many emails apparently from my Hotmail account because it's Hotmail. And I just saw like emails to Dennis from 5, 4, 6 years ago. It was just like, huh, what are these? Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that guy.
yeah, they would come out of the woodworks every once in a while, and I'd be like, yeah, I think I'm good. Everyone like, what was the last one? Not too long ago. Was it this year or last year? Someone had asked about either buying it or running it. I'm like, I didn't even reply. I'm like, this is not worth my time or effort to
No,
even think about it.
if
Like,
it's not Ash, if it's not me, if it's not you, if it's not Dave, It's not worth it. Like, those are the only people that I think I would trust with the GWF name, and we're all too old. I was just talking to my buddy because I used to own an escape room, and he used to own an escape room, and we've both been out of it now. He's been out of it for 4 years. I've been out of it for 6 years, and we talked about reminiscing about the escape rooms and running them, and talking about how much fun it was and how you sometimes miss it, but then you think logically about it, and you're like, nope, I'm good. That was a good time in my life. I don't need to do it again. And that's I feel like I have that with all these podcasts that we do when we talk about it, where it's like, oh, my juices are flowing, and but we only talk like once every 6 months or so when the pay-per-views are coming, certain ones. Maybe we talk 2 to 3 times a year in podcast format, and the juices get flowing. But it's not an every week thing. It's not a do all this stuff thing. Like, you just remember the good times, the laughter, the fun, the creative, and then you don't remember. I mean, we do when we're venting in our like AA session, but you're not really harping on how miserable some of this stuff was. And you then think about it and you're like, no, that was good. I'm fine with that staying in the past now. Like, that's good. It's fine there.
Yeah, I don't feel like wasting that amount of time again. If somebody wanted to back a dump truck of money to my house and offer for the GWF, domain name, just for, shits and giggles, even though I don't own the .com, I only own the .net because somebody else owned the .com, because there was the old real
Yeah.
GWF,
Well, yeah.
who I think I mentioned before I think somebody from that organization did contact me at one point in time, saying they owned the trademark, and I was like, haha, look, it's expired, go away. And I never heard a thing again.
Yeah.
So it felt like, hey, here's a cash grab, and I just brushed them off. But I mean, that's about the only thing I'd entertain at this point. Is like, if you offer me a goblet of cash, hey, I want that name. Like, fine, send me, as long as the check clears, I guess, at this point. But that's about as much as I would care to entertain. After that, if there's any work involved, yeah, because anything website related is gonna come back to me. Like, hey, I'm trying to do this. Like, I don't care. You're on your own. I don't have the time nor brain power to deal with this right now. So
I always felt bad when I was running it, and then I'd have to reach out to you because I was like, he's already moved on. He's doing other stuff with his life. Clearly, the EFED thing was a part of it. Now it's not, and I'm being like, dude, I don't know what the hell is going on or how to fix this. And then I remember we got hacked-ish one time. Like, there was this stupid line of code that kept appearing in every single website that we had, every single page, and it wouldn't let people go to the website and whatever. So I remember you having to like take what you had backed up before, put it over, and then me having to like re-upload all the graphics and results so to kind of make everything work out right. So I remember that and feeling bad about it. I remember asking like, hey, we're trying to switch this, that, and the other. Especially because you had obviously more access to the back end, full back end stuff. Like, I had access to the FTP, but you had access to like the server or whatever it's called, where you could look at certain things that maybe I had access to, but didn't know what the hell I was doing with like the databases. I was just like, I don't know what this stuff is. So I always felt that, but I always appreciated like you being like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I assumed it didn't take that much time for most of it, maybe besides the backup part of it. But it was always good to know, like, eventually he's going to get back a hold of me and usually have an answer. It might not be right away, but it might be like, because I always try to get a hold of you ahead of time if I could and be like, hey, we're thinking of this. Is that something that you'd be willing to help with? Or like when I got a hold of you, hey, we're shutting down GWF. Like, would you be willing to do something for that? And you did your Secrets of GWF video for YouTube, which was great. But like, I let you know well ahead of time, like, hey, we're going to be closing, here you go. And then you to do that, us to post it was great. But I always was like, God, he must be so fucking annoyed by these emails. And that's just for me, let alone anybody else who was getting a hold of you. Because I also remember, because when you were pretending to be Kevin, you were getting emails from people about the EFED stuff. Then you were getting emails about the website stuff under yourself as the webmaster. So I can't imagine during when you were running both, but then when it was just me, or when I was running it and I was emailing you, I was just like, oh, this poor guy might just be like, God damn it, another email from KJ. Why won't he leave me alone? Figure it out yourself.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there had been times like that, but um, when it's few and far between, it's fine. And when it sounds like a problem that's not too big of a deal. Like, hey, we want to redesign the whole site. No, no, you good luck. Like you're on your own. Um, and I guess it's also good that I probably haven't checked that webmaster email in, I don't even know if it still works, to be honest. So that's probably for my sanity, to be honest. And so I don't think there's too many people that outside of that group that have any one of my, I don't know, however many emails I have, um, other than the webmaster. So yeah, I haven't checked the webmaster email. I could have gotten a whole ton of email there that I don't even know about, and it's best that I don't, honestly.
I'm trying to remember. No, okay, I do have your Gmail. I was like, am I still emailing the GWF one? I had to think for a second. I had to go look because I was like, I don't remember which one I had because I think that's the original one that I had was your email for GWF, which was probably the webmaster one. And then eventually
Probably.
it swapped over. You're like, hey, contact me on this one if you're going to contact me. But I'm pretty sure that's how I reached out to begin with, was like grabbing that email and being like, hey, so yada yada. It's good to hear that I wasn't wrong in thinking of you a couple times being like, God damn it, leave me alone. I don't care. This is in my past now. You wanted to run it, fucking run it. Leave me the hell alone.
Especially if I was out somewhere and then the email comes to my phone, I'd be like, what the fuck? God damn it. Like, that would be the word. Like, I thought I was done with this damn thing. Like,
Oh, good times. But at least we laugh about it now, and I do think it's hilarious that your mom just randomly brought that up, and we've been talking for the last what 2 years, like intermittently with the podcast of reviewing wrestling, reminiscing, and all this stuff. To randomly like, hey, remember that thing you used to do? Well, actually, we talk about that like every 6 months. We have a support group. We all cry on each other's shoulders about how terrible and great it was.
see, so this goes out to all the other people out there that stay at their parents' house for way too long before they move out, and you live in a cave and you don't leave your computer for days on end and you work on some website that you don't get paid for. There is hope. There's always hope.
There's also hope that your mom's going to randomly remember 10 years, 15 years after the fact and be like,
She
hey,
re- it's funny because she specifically remembered me cutting PSDs, scanning in the pro because I would buy the programs from WWE and I would scan them in and I would sit there and I had one of the Wacom drawing tablets and I would cut the PSDs out so I would have my own super high quality PSDs.
you did that by
And she
hand with that thing?
it was like a pen, yeah.
Oh, God, I used to do Photoshop and do was it lasso tool? And it never looked great. It was just like good enough.
I'm too OCD. Like even like people, I remember the one I absolutely hated the most was Sean O'Hare because he had the long hair, but it wasn't like wetted down. It would kind of be like a little wavy at the bottom, but you could kind of see through it. And he
Yeah.
was on a white background. I was like, this motherfucker. I couldn't cut his hair enough to where the white was gone. Every time I put it, I could still see the white in the hair. I'm like, I hate this. I hate every moment of this. Why did he have to be on a white background? If it was black, I could have made it anything I wanted, but white? White? So one I remember vividly.
Oh, that's way too funny. Hey, look, we got in our GWF bitch session. It never fails. It never
Nope.
fails. There's
Listen,
always something that we remember or think about.
there's plenty to bitch about there, trust me.
All right, Dennis. Well, it's always been a pleasure. I'm sure we'll talk again, whether it's WrestleMania time, whether it's Royal Rumble time. There'll be another time that I set up another podcast for us to chat. Maybe one day we'll get the other Buffalo people in. Doesn't seem like they're that interested, I'm telling you. Or it seems like they're somewhat interested, but are too busy or never want to pull the trigger. Maybe I'll just show up in Buffalo again and be like, hey, where do they live? I'm just going to show up and be like, hey, I brought my camera and some microphones. Dennis is on Zoom. Let's go.
I'll keep trying. You know what? I'll find the podcast. I'll keep sending them like, hey, you guys could have been part of this. You know,
Yeah.
you could tell me, you could talk about more about the, how it all started than I could. So uh I'll keep trying.
All right. But yeah, so that'll do it for this. Next week we are back in studio. It'll be the start of Corey's D&D campaign, so we'll see how he does, and we'll see you next week.